Our new partner who I'm really, really excited to announce we are working with. Super, super stoked. Thank you, Angie Huberman, for this connect. It's incredible. AG1 Athletic Greens. I've been using them for a while. I have them every morning on an empty stomach. Basically, take one scoop and you put it into a cup or glass or mug of 8 ounces of cold water. And this is all your greens for the day. You're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens. Every day I take this. It's so good for my digestion, my energy. It's simple. It's easy. I don't like taking a lot of vitamins. This has been really, really helpful for me. I've had a lot of stomach issues my whole life, and ever since I've been gluten-free and taking the AG1s, it's really helped me in my stomach in the mornings. I love it, and I'm so psyched that they're part of the One Life One Chance podcast. I'm sure a lot of people don't like eating greens, let alone drinking your greens, but I can tell you straight up, it's got a mild tropical taste, and the taste is actually really refreshing, and I really look forward to it each morning. Don't think it's just going to be just straight bland. It tastes really, really good, and it's good for you, so remember that. This one blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. It's incredible, just one scoop, especially for musicians who are vegans or just musicians in general who want to get those daily greens. You can get the packets. It's incredible. I just gave some to my friend Derek from Sepultura. He traveled the whole entire world this summer, and he had those every single day. He said it saved him. I bring AG1s with me when I travel. It helps me stay healthy. You know the deal. If you're on tour and you are a picky eater, but you need to have your greens, sometimes catering doesn't have greens. Sometimes you miss the catering. Sometimes you miss the backstage food. Sometimes it's too late after the show to go get food that you like. So if you just have a scoop of AG1s in your hotel room before you go to bed, or you're in the hotel room at night and you're starving and you want something healthy, boom, life changer. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with some convenient daily nutrition. That's all you need, one scoop in a cup every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. This is it. I'm super psyched. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/OLLC. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/OLLC to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. This is incredible. I love it. It's just basic greens. For me personally, this has changed my life tremendously. I'm not a junk food vegan. I don't eat a lot of fake meats, so I'm strictly greens. And this has been a wonderful, wonderful new addition to my life. So once again, visit athleticgreens.com/OLLC. and get 1 free year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. athleticgreens.com/OLOC. Yo, Liquid Death, thank you so much for hydrating all my guests, taking care of me and my family and my friends. Love your water, love your brand, love what you stand for, love what you give back to the community. If you want to learn more about Liquid Death and how it started, listen to episode 115 with the co-founder, owner, and creator of Liquid Death, Mike Cesario. Just a punk rock skateboarding kid from Delaware with a dream. It's an incredible story, incredible journey. So if you go liquiddeath.com/Toby, you get free shipping on any items you order from liquiddeath.com. And if you want to get water, Liquid Death water, go to amazon.com. But for merchandise and other things that's not water, go to liquiddeath.com/Toby and get free shipping. Thank you so much, Liquid Death. Death to plastic, murder your thirst, stay hydrated. You know H2O saves lives. Welcome to the One Life One Chance podcast. I'm your host, Toby Morse. I got my brother from another mother, Mr. Derek Green, next to me once again.
Hi, Toby.
I love having you. I'm not going to give you too many props because I'm going to get you keep you humble. But you have a great voice, you have a great vibe together, energy. I love you being here. And the glasses look wonderful on you. My glasses look wonderful on you.
I'm definitely representing.
Your sold out glasses.
Yeah, in 3 days, people listening. My first glasses drop.
Congratulations.
Anyway, Joanne Molinaro, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, gentlemen.
The Korean vegan.
Yes.
Known to the world as well. Thank you for being here. I'm so excited. Chicago in the house.
Shito.
Absolutely.
She was just saying my house has like Chicago vibes in it.
And smell as well.
And smell.
But like in the very nice, nostalgic, beautiful way.
Thank you.
Okay.
No, this is stanky old
Yes.
housewife.
Yes.
That's all to my wife Moon, who's from Chicago and represents Chicago to the fullest to this day.
Right.
She'd move back there in a second, but I would never move to Chicago because the winter is brutal, and you know that.
It is, but so is New York. New York winters are brutal.
I know, but it's the wind.
Yeah, but
Maybe
it's on the lake, the lake effect.
Yes.
I know growing up in Cleveland, so we share some
Yeah.
lake experience.
Yeah, and now you
You're lake adjacent.
Yes, absolutely.
and now you live in California.
I do. I live in the valley.
Oh my God.
Yeah, where it's
Welcome.
desert hot.
Well,
10 degrees hotter, right?
Yes.
Even today, probably, right?
It is very,
Oh my
very
God.
warm.
How are you liking it so far?
We love it. We love the burbs. I lived in the city. I live
Yeah.
in Boys Town in Chicago. So to move from there to a decidedly suburban life was quite a nice change of pace for us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And your hubby's from Chicago as well.
Yes, yeah. Although he did have a stint in Ohio, not Cleveland,
oh my God,
but
on purpose? I'm
No.
I'm just joking. All the
he will be the
Ohioans
first
out
to
there.
say no.
Okay. It's in Ohio.
Yeah, I always have to ask because I'm like, why?
So why California after all those years being born and raised and living in Chicago?
Well, because of you. We're stalking you.
Thank you.
This podcast.
It's because that one. So let's rewind. So we met at this wonderful dinner maybe a year and
I
a
was
half
just
ago
gonna
at Rich
ask.
Roll's house.
Okay.
It was a wonderful dinner, and it was funny because like you had just released your book, maybe.
Yeah, I was around. Well, actually, my book would have been coming out in a few months.
Okay. So we're talking about her book coming out.
Mhm.
I have my first children's book coming out.
Nice.
Right.
And
Right.
then we're sitting with somebody else. We found out later who he was, and he was this huge writer. He reviewed my band in the New York Times. He has a
Wow.
huge podcast, writes all these things, and we're all like excited about our things. And it was a great, diverse group of people at the table, and we all met that way.
That's
Nice.
right. And I found out like your wife Moon was from Chicago, that writer had spent some time in Chicago. There was just a
Yes.
lot of unusual connections at that table.
And I feel like the roles are the one that made that kind of stuff happen, the energy.
Well, I think that actually speaks to the answer to your question, why we decided LA. It's like we're not actually stalking you, but there is some component of community.
Yeah.
That is what really brought us to LA. We love Chicago. I love Chicago. Born and raised there. I miss Chicago dearly, but the community that's focused on health, fitness, compassion, wellness, all of those things isn't yet there. And it was getting a little bit frustrating and sometimes isolating to just like literally go out to lunch sometimes. I'm like,
Yeah.
there's just like nothing for me to eat here. And the community was so disaggregated. Whereas here, going to Rich's house and meeting
Yeah.
so many people who I could just like be at ease with and be like, yeah, I don't need to explain my diet.
Totally.
It was really nice.
And how many times can you go to the Chicago diner?
Yeah,
Which is
well,
great. It's a staple.
that's exactly right. We were eating there once or twice a week, which was,
Wow.
It's,
not like great. I mean, I
what's
love
the
their
Chicago
food.
Diner?
It's the
What's that
one
about?
like mainstay vegan
Okay.
restaurant in
Yeah.
Chicago. It's
Okay.
old school and
been
they're
forever.
great. But again, I would like a diverse diet. And if it wasn't Chicago Diner, like I didn't have very many other options to go to in
Mhm.
my neighborhood. And that
Yeah.
was kind of frustrating.
It's interesting for such a big city, too.
Yeah, I would think
Especially
there'd be
2022
a
or
lot
whatever.
more.
Like,
I mean, since you moved away, I mean, do you ever feel that, man, maybe I should be the person to bring
I was just
these
thinking that
new
too. Like, be the-
elements, so
You be the
people,
leader of it all.
the leader, yeah, kind of like,
I thought about that. And of course, I tried in my own way. But
Right.
again, it was almost like Chicago wasn't really ready for me. And
Mm.
I was ready to try something different. I had to always balance what do I need in my own life to what do people need that I can bring them. So it's like a
Right.
supply and demand situation. But I have my own personal demands. And I wanted to spend at least some chunk of my life in a place where I felt extremely at ease and welcomed as opposed to ostracized or
that
like
makes sense.
uncomfortable.
Right.
And so that's kind of why I'm here. And for the most part, it's certainly lived up to its invitation, which was, hey, we get to eat vegan all the time. No one's going to give me a weird look for being like, hey, do you have the thing with the tofu instead of the chicken? Like that's just not a weird thing here. Whereas
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Chicago, it would have been like, what? What is tofu?
I think LA is the mecca for veganism for sure. Coming from New
Definitely.
York too. I mean, there's a lot of restaurants there now. I've lived there many years, but when you go back, there's always a new spot. But
No doubt. And there's a lot of places that may not be vegan, but they're really apt at making great one dish on their
Options.
menu options, which
Yeah.
usually end up being the best.
yeah,
Yeah.
because they really want to show you that they
Yeah.
can do that as well.
And they don't have to, they can focus on that one dish that, don't F it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
So how was it growing up in Chicago?
Chicago?
Chicago is beautiful. It was safe. We lived in a suburb. We grew up, I would say, from the age of 0 to 3. We lived in Chicago. We lived in, geez, I don't even remember. I would say Ravenswood area. And then we moved to Skokie when I was 4, lived there, and then moved to Wilmette, I think when I was in junior high. And then, so it was always suburban. I didn't move into the city until my divorce. That was when I was like 34, 35.
Wow.
So it was a really safe, lovely childhood. It's like when you think of Leave It to Beaver, like I literally thought Leave It to Beaver lived across from my street. Like
Wow.
that's
Pleasantville.
Was it like a very diverse neighborhood?
it
or
was. Yeah, there was a Japanese American young girl my age who lived around the block. We would ride bikes together. My best friend Sally O, who was Korean American, she lived 5 blocks from me.
Nice.
So it was a really diverse neighborhood. Skokie was kind of like up and coming in terms of a suburb. And so it was a great place for a young immigrant family to settle down. My parents bought their house for like, I don't know, like $55,000 or something like that. It was like a ranch house. And my grandma, she was so excited.
So your parents were from South Korea?
Yeah. Well, so they immigrated from South Korea. They were both born in what is now known as North Korea, but they immigrated from South Korea. And my grandmother came, both my grandmas came, but my mom's mom, she's a farmer. So seeing a house with a backyard and a plot of soil was just a dream for her.
Wow.
And that was my childhood. It was super safe. I always think about the screen door of our Skokie house as kind of this moniker of safety and nostalgia and beauty and family, because it was what sort of fenced out the larger world that I didn't know of at the time, while also keeping in some of that really beautiful safety that my grandmother created for us.
Yeah. Were your parents strict?
Yes, my parents, especially because I was the first child and because I was a girl. I wasn't allowed to have sleepovers or go to other people's homes like that. I wasn't allowed to watch much TV. I was only allowed 1 hour a day.
That's good.
And
Was it Leave It to Beaver?
no, it was a lot of Leave It to Me. That wasn't like necessarily on a list, but my mom definitely had a list of programs I wasn't allowed to watch. Like I was not allowed to watch 90210.
What?
Such a great
What
show.
the hell? That was teaching so many kids
I know.
about life.
Have you watched it since?
I have
Okay,
watched
okay.
it since, but I was not allowed to watch it.
Wow.
My parents are super strict, and I had to. There was this rule that she said. What did she say? She said you got to do your homework, but then you also have to do work for the next day. So like,
my
so she would do
Advanced homework.
review and preview. That's what she
Wow.
called it. So I'd have to do the homework, but then she also made me do all of the math problems for the next chapter that hadn't been assigned yet.
Wow. Were you good at math?
I was good enough. My father tutored me in math since I was 4. So
Oh, that's
between
awesome.
the ages of 4 and I would say
It's probably a
freshman year
yes.
in high school, yeah, we did a lot of math in my house.
Siblings? How many siblings?
I have one younger brother.
Okay.
Wow, man. So
Damn.
it was just school.
It was a lot of studying. My parents emphasized that a lot with me, not so much with my little brother. I think partly because he was the second child and also because he was a boy. And for me, they just were so anxious all the time about keeping me close to home and making sure I wasn't subjected to bad influences or like get pregnant, I guess. They were just like really nervous about me. So I was kept like at home a lot. I was allowed to do extracurricular activities like orchestra and math club and Latin club. My big rebellion was doing musical theater.
God forbid.
I know. But we had a huge fight about that too. In junior year, I was forbidden from doing musical theater and acting.
Wow. Were you allowed to listen to music?
I was allowed to listen to music, but
No Backstreet Boys.
so my taste in music is unusual.
Okay.
I think I was never really subjected to pop culture very much other than New Kids on the Block. From the age of like 10 to 11, I was obsessed with New Kids on the Block.
Great, they're awesome.
That was it. Everything else I knew was classical music.
Nice.
So
Oh, that's nice.
yeah, or like my dad's weird folk music that he listened to, like Simon and Garfunkel. Yeah.
I was just expecting something radically
No.
different.
Like that was weird to me. Like Sound of Silence all the time in our house and stuff like that.
Man.
But other than that, I didn't listen to rock or anything like that. My parents once made the mistake of buying me like an AC/DC like tape, because they were like, they went to the nearest Coconuts. You guys remember Coconuts?
Yes.
Yeah.
I totally remember the coconut. Oh my God.
So they went to the coconut store and they didn't know what to buy me. So they asked the girl, like, hey, we have a junior high 7th grader. What should we buy her for her birthday? So they bought me an AC/DC tape.
That is so random. and
I know.
amazing.
So anytime I got mad at my parents, I would blast that tape, like a full
Was it
blast.
Back in Black or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. Yeah, that Back in Black looks good. Let's
Yeah.
get it.
And I was just like, I would blast
That's
it. And I
hilarious.
like didn't really like the music, but I was like, this is my FU to my parents.
Yes.
Wow. Thank you, ACDC.
Yeah.
Yes, it was an excellent tool.
It's crazy they called and asked what would be the good.
No, they
I
didn't
love-
call. They
Oh,
went to the
okay.
store and they spoke to the young
Wow.
lady there,
Like,
and they
that's
got that. I
I
know.
knew that
I
person
know.
was. Who just did it as a joke. Let's give ACDC.
No, they were giving probably the truth at that time. That
She was
like
clearly a big
banging.
fan. She was a clear. Yeah.
So they were,
Wow.
needless to say, they were very traditional, your parents.
Yeah.
In many ways they were, but in many other ways they were not. My mother was the breadwinner of our house by a significant margin, and my dad seemed to be pretty cool with that.
Right.
So there was that. My mother also spoke fluent English. Both my parents speak fluent English, but my mother spoke it without an accent. And at the time when you're growing up, that can make
Yeah.
a huge difference, because it meant that this language barrier, or even a perceived one, which I certainly had with my father, didn't exist. And language barriers can prevent much more than the communication, just strict superficial communication. It can prevent or impede emotional communication. And I didn't really have that with my mom. I often thought of her as sort of my peer,
Right.
as opposed to just my mother. And that was good, but it could also be bad.
Yeah.
So how's your Korean?
My Korean's horrible now. It's
Okay.
very, very bad. It used to be, according to my mother, beautiful. She said that I spoke beautiful Korean. It was my first language because I was raised by my grandmother and she didn't speak English.
Yeah.
But by the time I got to kindergarten, it just like
Oh, that early on.
drained out of me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So your parents weren't speaking at home to each other?
They did, but in Korean. But the thing is, I so rarely saw my parents together. I feel like even in my memory, my oldest memories always involve my grandmother, because she really, either my mother's mother or my father's mother, both of whom ended up living with us and raising me and my brother until we were probably around 14. I was 14. So when I think about what many people think about from their childhood in terms of their formative years and who raised them, I always think about my grandmas. My mom was there, but she was always working, and my dad worked nights. So he worked from like 1 a.m. till 10 a.m.
What
And
did they do? I'm sorry.
So my mother was a nurse in the emergency room, and my father worked for the United States Postal Service.
Wow.
And because he was working in the middle of the night, he was sleeping during the day.
Yeah.
So I didn't really see him very much.
Wow. Were you tight with your brother?
Yes, my brother was and remains my best friend.
That's
amazing.
cool.
Yeah, he's my best friend.
That's amazing. So like basically kind of no social life during high school, no dating, none of that stuff.
So that's not true. I would say one of my vices since I was a young person was boys. I was very into boys, and that drove my mom crazy.
Right.
My mom was always like, you're not allowed to date until college. I mean, that was like a very strict rule in my house. But I always found a way to do what I wanted to do with the boys.
Yeah.
And so I had a very robust social life, notwithstanding my parents' attempts to put boundaries around what that would look like. And that just meant that I had to be very good at playing the part, which was, all right, I'll bring home the grades. I'll study really hard. I'll take all the AP classes, and I'll even give up on my curricular activities, but not all of them, I guess.
I get it. So sneaking out the window and stuff like that?
There was a lot of sneaking out the back
Like
door
in the movies.
or sneaking people in the back.
I'd be terrified.
Hopefully
right
my
now.
mom's not going to
And you
listen
never
to
got
this.
close to getting caught ever?
No, there were times when she caught me, but she didn't call me out on it. Like there were times where she was like, "What's that thing on your neck?" And I'd be like, "Oh, no, I just like hurt myself. Sorry, She knew.
Wow.
She
Right,
knew,
right.
but she
Moms
would
know that.
Yeah, definitely.
Wow. So, you graduated obviously high school, and then what were your goals? What you want to do?
So in high school, I thought I wanted to be a teacher because I loved school so much. And so many of the more important people in my life, the adults in my life, were also teachers. My father tutored me until I was 14. So
Awesome.
I was used to that environment, and I love to read and I love to write. So I thought I would be an English teacher. But for some reason, I didn't major in education. I decided to major in English, and I wanted to double major in vocal performance because I really wanted to be a singer. My parents were not supportive of my musical endeavors. Unless it was violin, they were not going to get behind it. So they were like, "We'll only pay for your college if you major something other than the arts." And so, so I had to major in English. I wanted to be a singer though. So the original plan was to go to a music school. I applied to a bunch of music schools and I got into some pretty good conservatories, but my parents couldn't afford to send me to like Oberlin or something like that.
Oberlin,
Yeah. So instead of going to Oberlin, I went to U of I, which is an in-state public school, because I knew the tuition wouldn't be very high. And I thought, well, I can take voice lessons while I'm there and eventually get into the music school if that's what I still want to do. But once I got to college, being an adult was so scary. And I was like, I don't know if I have what it takes to be an artist. It's a really, really scary life. And I had been raised to be so risk averse.
Right.
It was just like really frightening. And then, of course, I met the first boy I ever fell in love with at that time, and everything just kind of fell off the rails then. And I was like, I just want to get the heck out of school so I could be with my boyfriend because, so then the whole double major thing was just like not an option because I would have had to been in school for 5 years. And at the time, all I could think about was graduating. So I just really doubled down on English, figured I like it enough and I can figure out what I want to do on the back end.
Yeah. What was your inspiration for singing?
Well, my father is a singer. He loves to sing. We also have other musicians in my family. My aunt, my father's younger sister, was a professional singer in Korea.
Oh, wow.
So music was always part of our lives. I was always like trotted out in front of church when I was like 2 or 3 years old and made to sing. And they're like, oh, this, little girl has such a beautiful voice and blah, blah, blah. So singing was just a huge part.
So I don't understand, why weren't they supportive? Like, if you had like such an incredible voice at a young age and you had family members,
Because music's not a career to people.
It's not money making.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
You're not going to make money. There's no proven career path in Korea for a singer. Nowadays, maybe it's a little different. I remember when Psy became really big, my dad told my brother, why don't you do something like Psy? Like that was a viable career path now.
oh my God. I mean, think about music. You know what I mean? Like, even to this day, even with like all the success of musicians.
I know.
And stuff,
But I mean, it just seems that it made you so happy.
Oh, they don't care about that.
Happiness, no.
Happiness was like way on the bottom
had a
of the
path they
totem
wanted
pole.
for you, you know what I mean? Like,
They just wanted me to be safe, and I understand
Right.
that because they live so much of their lives in poverty and starvation.
Right.
So happiness was like, yeah, it would be great if you had happiness, but let's just keep you alive first. So that was their priority.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. So are you working jobs and stuff when you're going to school?
Yeah. So I started my first part-time job when I was 12. And so I had to get a special dispensation from school because I think it was like child labor laws or something like that. Yeah. So I started working at 12. At that time, I was working as like an assistant, an administrative assistant for some dude. And it was really bad. I remember hold on. Yeah, I know.
This already sounded
it was really bad.
sketchy.
It was sketchy. Yeah.
Oh my god.
I didn't know it was sketchy at the time.
Did your parents, were they like,
No.
No?
Because it was through school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
They like got the job notice through school, and I got the job, and I was entering data onto a computer and sorting through the guy's mail. And I remember every day he would just get porno in his mail. And I was like,
And you're 12?
yeah. And I was like, this is something weird. Like, I don't know how I feel about this. But, you know, I was raised to never complain, never say anything to adults. You do what you're told. So I just like kept doing what I was told until I got so uncomfortable I finally quit. So that didn't last very long.
Right.
Yeah. And it was really uncomfortable though.
That is, especially at 12, just seeing, you know what I mean? Like, that might be the first time I even saw stuff like
yeah,
that.
it was not good. It was like really strange. And then I got a job as a co-host at Eduardo's Pizza. Remember that?
A co-host?
Yes. Like I was the person who said, "Welcome to Eduardo's Pizza." Or I'd pick up the phone and be like, "Hi, I'm Joanne. What can I order for you?" And they would tell me what their order would be. And then I would make the antipasta salads in the back, and I became the fastest at making antipasta salads.
Wow.
I excelled in every environment.
Oh my god.
So, obviously, tradition-wise, was there lots of meat in your life growing up, too, as well, right?
For sure. I mean, well, no, I should say from an American diet perspective,
Yeah.
yes. From a Korean diet perspective, not really. Like, I don't remember lots of meat because meat is expensive. And my family was so frugal. So we only had meat for like special occasions. Like when we would eat Korean barbecue, like people think Korean food, oh, it's just Korean barbecue all the time. We would only have Korean barbecue like, I don't know, 7-8 times a year. Like it wasn't a big thing because it was so expensive to do that. So for special occasions, we'd go out to the beach and we'd have a barbecue or something like that.
Yeah.
Most of the time, my grandmother would just make food from our backyard, which is just like, you know, peppers, perilla leaves, and corn, tomatoes, like whatever she could get from our backyard would fill out our plates during the mealtime. And so like, I don't remember lots of meat. I remember more like lots of stews and vegetables and things like that. I don't think they were vegan because fish and fish sauce and those types of things are so endemic of Korean cuisine, but it wasn't meat centric. I feel like it was much more vegetable forward at least in my childhood until I got to like high school and college when I was like, no, I want to eat ham sandwiches and stuff like that.
Bologna sandwiches.
Yeah, give me. I ate bologna all the time.
Oh
Were you cooking?
God.
Were you learning how to cook at a young age
No.
too? Or no,
No.
that wasn't until later.
Yeah.
So you kind of rebellious, like you said. I mean, bologna sandwiches. I'm dating boys. Like the more strict parents can be as a parent, thinking about that.
True.
You want to rebel, so you want to do
I was
totally opposite.
Completely the opposite. My parents were like, yeah, you can do whatever you want. And I was like, not dating.
Oh,
not
really?
going out. Yeah. Not at all.
See?
It was just a nerd.
Reverse
or something.
psychology.
Reverse psychology. Yeah. It was like, all right.
And I have that with Max with the communication, the trust. Like from day one, we have communication. So Max would, like I say, he texts us from school, hey, all my friends are skipping the last period. Can I skip? Nobody else are texting their parents asking if they can skip a class.
He's so
But
cute.
he'd run it by us first. Like, yeah, sure, he can do that. And like, just knowing, like, we know where you're at. We know you're safe. We know you're at a party. We know you don't drink. And just that communication. Because once you have the trust, right? Like you said, your parents like do what you want because they trusted you, and you
Right.
don't want to let them down and do something crazy.
Exactly.
Right?
You start to get that feeling of guilt, like,
Yeah, I think
You know?
my mom tried to cultivate that later.
right.
But to your point, by that time it was kind of too late
yeah.
because
yeah.
there had already been so much mistrust or
No.
distrust like throughout my life that I was like, no, I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing. Like if you know, you're just going to have to live in ignorance until I'm ready for it.
So how old were you when you moved out?
I was 24,
Wow.
25. It was like right before I got married because my parents didn't want me to live with a man until I was married.
So they were pretty religious as well?
Oh
Like-
yeah. My mom
Okay,
is
yeah.
super religious,
Got
very
it, got
like,
it,
yeah.
yeah.
So I wasn't really allowed to live with my fiance until like right before the wedding.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
Okay. All
So
right.
24. Wow.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
24 or
it's not bad.
25, something like that. Yeah.
Still
There's a
young.
lot of rules to live by.
Oh, I had a curfew until that time too.
You had a curfew in your 20s.
I was not allowed to stay out past 1
Yeah,
a.m.
it's their house.
It's their house.
That
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
that. She's like, as long as you're under my roof,
Right.
you have to come home at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
Do you have to pay rent too there? Or
No.
Okay.
So that's very anti-Korean.
All right,
Like, yeah, they would never do that to their kids, especially
you
their
could do that
daughter.
to their kids, though.
Yeah, and I think
know.
that's good in some ways.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell me why.
I think it's a way to learn responsibility, and it's real life. It's
Yeah.
like, you had a great. I hope you enjoyed your time.
Had a great
It's
run.
18 Good run.
Great
You
run.
had a good run.
We had a good run together.
Now you're 18 and a half. And so
Yeah, it's like, at least maybe not half the rent or anything like that, but maybe,
Pitching
some
in.
A little
pitching
something,
in.
something. Yeah.
Definitely like something.
like how we have Max paying for his car insurance.
Yeah, or like
Yes.
pay for a utility. Like you
Yeah,
got to pay
yeah,
for high-speed
yeah.
internet or something.
Right, yes, exactly. Something, because
Yeah.
the world isn't like that where you're just like casually like, to be able to have your parents, that's such a beautiful thing. And
It is.
I think you have a
man.
better appreciation of that when you're chipping in.
What about chores? You have a lot of chores?
Not a lot. My parents' main thing was like, your job is school. And so the only chore that I had was on Saturday morning, I was required to empty all the garbage cans in the house.
Okay.
That was it. So it wasn't that bad.
Make your bed?
No, like literally my parents were just like not that strict about that. But on the other hand, my mom would go through these like weird spells. Like, you know how like when, I don't know, as a parent, Max is like an angel, but I don't know if as a parent you ever felt like frustrated with everything, not just being a parent, but with all the things that are happening, with all the responsibilities of being an adult. And when my mom felt that way, when she was overwhelmed, she would start to clean. And so her clean was like rage clean. She was like rage cleaning the house. And so I always started to feel really anxious when my mom started to clean the house, because I knew like if I step one toe out of turn, she's going to lose her shit and she's going to yell at us or she's going to get mad at us. And so now, like, Anthony is really into cleaning, and I've had to tell him, I'm like, I'm sometimes triggered by your cleaning because I automatically get anxious every time I see someone cleaning, like my mom is about to yell at us about something.
It's interesting you say that, because I do notice that about, I'm going to put my wife on blast right now. I do notice about my wife is she comes home, she's stressed from a job, right? And we're trying to sit down and watch one of our shows, and she's cleaning everything around the TV, every knickknack, everything in that living room. And I'm like, can't you just sit down? She goes, no, I can't. And sometimes she'll stay up all night and clean till like 2 or 3 in the morning.
Oh, my
this whole
goodness.
house, like,
Yeah.
I wake up and this place will be spotless. I'm like, that's amazing you did that, but like, take some time to sit down. But I know it's definitely gonna be like stress or like just your release.
Yeah.
I haven't even thought about that.
Yeah, so I didn't think about it either at the time.
Yeah.
I just tried to get out of her way as much as possible. But now in retrospect, I realize it had very little to do with me and my brother.
Yeah, she has a way to get it out.
Yeah.
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 Is it- you
Parenting
feel
is
the same way
hard.
like that too? Do you clean a lot? And
I do now. Once I had my son and I was living with like a baby, and my ex, it's very different in Europe. My ex is European and from Czech Republic, and and her mother was a clean freak, and she would yell at her, and it kind of passed on to her. But it's definitely, I completely understand the, this obsession, that something's going on. And my ex was like that. Her mother was like that. And I was just like stepping on eggshells at times, walking around like, oh man, here we go. Like something's going on. But it's a weird thing. But now it's kind of passed on me. I like to have everything super, super clean. And with, having a baby, I never thought about all those things. Like you can't leave it like this. You can't be that dirty anymore. And I was like, I got it.
and then you inspired me to start making the bed more.
Yes.
That's how you were raised.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
leaving the house with like a bed made.
Yes.
And coming home to something.
It just feels good, and it's also discipline that it's like, I don't really want to, but it's just like kind of the start today and getting into a routine, which is extremely important. It's
Structure. in your life.
structure. Exactly.
Yeah.
For the mental. And just
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
Wow. Exactly. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So do you go to law school soon after that? Like
What?
why
Really?
become a lawyer? Like with that?
So as I mentioned, when I got to college, I just
You have a great voice, by the way, in the microphone.
Thank you.
So soothing.
Thank you.
It's very soothing.
Oh, well, thank you.
I'm glad the mosquito was
Well,
gone. Too.
Yes,
Okay, go
the
ahead.
mosquito is at least I'm protected from it. But I went to college, and as I mentioned, I met my first husband there, and I was totally besotted and head over heels. He graduated within a semester. So I only had a very short period of time with him, and therefore all I could think about was getting out of school. So I graduated in 3 years. I actually discovered halfway through my freshman year that I had started as a sophomore. I didn't know that. So I had so many credits from high school that transferred into college credits that I was considered a sophomore. So I decided to take advantage of that for a lot of reasons, mostly just to be with my boyfriend, but also because it meant a year's worth of tuition that I could save my parents from having to pay.
Very nice.
So yes.
Very nice.
I graduated in 3 years. The problem that happens when you're so focused on just exiting school is that you don't necessarily think about what happens at the other end. And I certainly didn't. It was like maybe a few months before graduation that I realized I have no plan. I don't know what I'm going to do after graduation. I think now is around the time that I should be looking for a job. So I graduate from college. I have no job. And this is back in the day. There's not really like internet the way that we think of it. It was still dial up and stuff like that. So I literally got the Chicago Tribune and the classifieds with the blue marker, and I was circling ads for jobs. And I finally got a job as a resume writer for a large outplacement firm in the city. Okay. And so all I did was look at the files of high executives who've been laid off from the big Fortune 200 companies, and I just wrote their resumes. So it was a really great way for me to see like what's out there in terms of corporate America. I had still harbored some notion of becoming a teacher, but then I just got kind of tempted and lured by, getting on the Metro and getting off at my stop and walking around with corporate America into these big high-rise buildings.
I got it. What year did you graduate high school?
I was 1997.
Wow.
Yeah,
we were working across from each other in New York that time.
Really?
I was selling shoes. He was selling clothes in Soho.
Oh, okay.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
Just to have
amazing.
Yeah. So that like it was a different time than it is today.
Yeah, of course.
So I was like, all right, I just want to be a corporate Joe, literally. So I started looking at all these resumes that I was writing for these clients, and one day I was assigned the file of a lawyer. And I was looking at her file and her resume, and she made $45,000 a year. And I remember I had taken a home ec class in high school, and I had done the math, and I was like, I could live comfortably on $45,000 a year.
Time?
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah. I could own my own small car, pay my insurance, go to vacation in California once a year.
Wow.
That was the plan. And I was like, okay, this is it. I should just be a lawyer.
Okay.
I don't want to be a business person because I can't sell shit. And
But then it's more school.
But I liked school. School was safe.
Okay.
I'm good at school.
Got it.
I'm not good at adulting. So
were you scared of the real world at that point a little bit to prolong, just keep staying in
absolutely.
school?
I needed something. I was still living with my parents and all this stuff. So I decided law school was great for me. My mom had always said, you're so rebellious and you're so disobedient. You should be a lawyer. That's what she always said. So I was like, all right.
So they were stoked.
Yeah. I didn't tell them for a long time because I was really worried that they would be like, why are you doing this? Or that they would put too much pressure on me to succeed. And getting into law school is not easy.
Right.
And so I didn't tell them until like right before the LSAT. And then my mom was like, oh my God, why didn't you tell me? Blah, 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 blah. And she also told me, don't even bother trying unless you get into the top 2 law schools in Chicago. That's my mom.
Wow.
Wow.
She's really she's a lovely lady. You're going to meet her and you'd be like, oh my God, she's like the nicest lady in the whole world. But she was total like psychological warfare against me and my brother.
But wanting the best for you and, obviously.
In her
heart,
definition, yes. She always wanted the best for us.
Yeah, she was protecting you and
yes.
Maybe protecting a little too much as far as like keeping you away from the world.
She had a lot of unresolved anxiety springing from the trauma she suffered in her own childhood.
There you go.
Very understandable.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there are things from your past that come to life as a parent.
Totally.
And that happened to her very regularly. At the time, of course, I had no idea. But in retrospect, she was so anxious about protecting me from the pains that she had suffered as a child, that she was being overbearing, totally strict, and in many ways causing a rift that wasn't necessary. But you know, now as an adult, I see all of that, and we don't have any of that anymore.
Yeah. That's amazing. So now you're a lawyer.
Yes. So I went to law school. I got into law school. I got into the top 2 per my mom's suggestion.
Wow.
And so I got it in Chicago. I wasn't leaving Chicago because my then fiance, my husband, was there. So I was like, I'm not leaving Chicago.
What was he doing?
Yeah, what's he do? Yeah.
He was a social worker at the time.
Okay.
So he majored in psychology and he was a social worker. And our plan was to get married as soon as we could, or not as soon as we could, but eventually. And I wasn't leaving him again. I'd already had to have what I viewed as a long distance relationship for the 2.5 years I was in college after he'd left. And that had traumatized me like so badly. I was like, I'm not doing that. So my options are very limited, but luckily I got into both of the schools I really wanted to and ended up going to U of Chicago, which was awesome school.
Yeah, and then what kind of lawyer were you?
Yeah.
I became a litigator, a commercial litigator. It was funny. I'm not big on confrontation. It causes me intense anxiety.
Sure.
But at the same time, I'm very argumentative. So I thought when I started as an intern that I would be a transactional lawyer. I'm like, I'm more about bringing people together than I am fighting. So I was like, mergers and acquisitions, that's what I should be. And I did one deal during my internship and I was like, this is the most boring shit ever. I can't do this. This is so boring. And where I really came to life was the mock trial program over the summer. And I was like, now this I could get behind. And that's why I became a litigator.
Wow.
Intense.
Yeah.
Yeah. You remember like your first case?
I don't remember my first case, but I do remember a case from when I was a baby lawyer. It was about a staircase. This very, very rich man ordered a contractor to come in and build a beautiful wooden staircase. And it cost him $20,000 for this staircase. And the staircase started to come apart because he had these huge windows and the sunlight would stream in through these floor to ceiling windows and would melt the glue that held the staircase together.
Wow.
And so all the pegs started popping off and the staircase became very dangerous. Like you couldn't walk up the staircase. So he sued the contractor. He sued the general contractor. He sued everyone, spent like probably 10 times as much as it cost him to get the staircase in the first place. And we ultimately ended up winning.
Wow.
Nice.
That's an interesting case.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Perfect case for a first year
Right.
commercial litigator, like just to cut my teeth on the law.
You were working for a law firm?
Yes, I still work for that law firm.
Oh.
Same law firm?
Nice.
Wow.
Wow.
How many years now?
18 years.
Whoa.
I
That's
know.
amazing.
I know. I picked a good one.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And so are you doing the same kind of work out here?
No, I don't.
Your life's so different now. I think.
Yeah, I don't do much legal work anymore, although I have been taking a bunch of continuing legal education classes in the past month because my deadline is rearing itself. But other than that, I don't practice very much. I consult with my firm every once in a while when they need something or if there's a legacy client that requires my attention.
Wow. I want to start
Yeah.
throwing some of these things in there. Were you always a runner too? Were you running?
No.
Wow.
I hated physical activity.
Yeah, I thought about that because in school we didn't talk about sports or nothing.
No, I hated physical activity. My dad forced me to play tennis when we were little kids, and that made me very unhappy about
Okay.
Yeah.
physical activities.
So that was it, tennis.
Yeah, my dad made me play tennis a lot, like to the point where I was like, this is ridiculous. He would literally bring us out in wintertime, and there would be no net in the tennis court, and we would still be required to play.
Wow.
That's how hardcore he was. He would call it our exercise.
It's pretty good exercise though.
It is really good
Yeah. Full body.
exercise, and I appreciate it in retrospect, but at the time, it was just another thing like math tutoring where I hated my dad's guts for making me do it. So was not into physical activity. And then for a good chunk of my relationship with my first husband, I was very unfit, very overweight.
Really?
Yeah, I was 190 pounds.
Whoa.
I was very much larger.
Nothing wrong with that, but I didn't
No,
know,
I mean,
I didn't
you're-
know that. Just looking at
It was
it,
not
Yeah,
good
your
for
height.
me. It was
Yeah.
wrong for me because
Right.
it didn't do it did a lot of bad things for my health. It
Mhm.
was hard for me to move at
Yeah.
that size. I mean, I'm only 5 feet tall.
That's what I was
Yeah.
going to say.
So
I didn't-
it was hard for
Yeah.
me, and I couldn't like even get up the stairs without having to stop because I was so out of breath.
Oh my God.
But when you're that
Wow.
stressed out,
Yeah.
I was a practicing attorney at that time. I was
Stressful.
working a lot, and so the easy answer was always McDonald's and Taco Bell, and that's basically what I subsisted on for many
and that's
years.
Nothing like how you grew up either, because you were sheltered from that kind of food for sure.
Oh,
well, yes, that's exactly right. When I got to college, and it was like you can eat exactly. It was a total free for all. Pizza, hamburgers, and pancakes. Exactly, waffles.
You were wild now.
Totally. I gained 35 pounds my freshman year. Because I was just like, I can eat everything that I was never allowed to eat all of a sudden. And it was part of the meal plan. So it was just nonstop eating. And it set me up in so many ways for a lot of problems with food later on in life.
And so what was a point where you decided to
was there a
get
turning
fit?
point?
Or, was it turn by running and become a vegan, all that? What was...
So my first, quote, diet started when I was a freshman in college, because I came home and my family was very concerned
what happened?
about my size, and they made it very clear that it wasn't acceptable. And so,
even harder.
So, and again, I don't say these things. Like, I don't want anyone to think my parents are mean or anything. They loved me and they protected me. And this was as much for my own sake. They were concerned. They were worried about my health, but they were also worried in Korea, like, my appearance would not have been okay. And so they were worried about people criticizing me and judging me for my size, even if they didn't. So they were like, you need to lose weight. So that was my first crash diet. I went on lean cuisine, the frozen TV dinners. That was like all I ate, lean cuisine, like all the time. And then I would run a lot on the treadmill, and it was at a 4% incline. And I didn't know it at the time, but that was the default setting of our treadmill. So this whole time I'm running at 4% incline, not realizing that this isn't flat. And then I remember like one day, like years later, I was like, wait, what is this button? I was like, oh my God, I've been running on this hill for like years on this treadmill. But so that was the beginning. I lost a lot of weight.
Okay.
How old were you then?
I was probably 19.
Okay.
Wow.
I lost a lot of weight, gained it back. That was my first real major diet. But I had experimented with all sorts of different kinds of diets.
So you went beyond lean cuisine.
Oh, yeah. We did all sorts of things, and we being me during those years. Like, my mom would be like, you should go on the vinegar diet. Well, all you do is eat vinegar every day. Or like, try there was this one other diet where she was like, I don't know, it was like the grape diet or like weird things like that. Yeah. So I had to do all of those. And my mom was always like, you just need to lose 10 more pounds. Just lose 10 more pounds. And but that conversation of losing 10 pounds started when I was probably 3 or 4, like as for my whole life, basically. Just lose 10 more pounds. Just lose 10 more pounds. I was never skinny Asian. I was always round, chubby Asian. And I think that was so hard for my mom because she's skinny Asian. And she was worried for me that I would be...
Your brother? No.
My brother was also larger. Like, we have the same body type, but he's a boy. And they're like, you can get away with that as a boy.
He's just husky.
He's strong,
right.
He's, but
the terminology, husky.
Exactly. There is terminology for boys, not applicable to girls.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I see.
Wow. So it seems like a lot of pressure just.
Yeah, it started early.
Grades for everything, for all that.
Being the perfect girl in a Korean household can definitely be a lot of pressure. But at the same time, like I said, I had a lot of safety, a lot of fun.
Totally.
It was like, we did the whole thing, like ride our bikes around the block. We did hide and seek, played tag, swing contests. There were like all of that stuff. My childhood was still wonderful.
And I mean, with the lean cuisine and everything, you hadn't thought about being plant-based.
No.
Okay.
So there was one time in law school, or maybe even after law school, I can't remember. I talk about it on my own podcast. I can't remember. I was doing the research, like going back, but so I don't remember. But there was one time after we watched this movie called Instinct. Have you guys seen that? Yeah. So we watched that movie, my brother and I, and we were both like, okay, we're going vegetarian.
Really?
Yeah, we were so moved by that movie. But leading up to that, my brother and I always had this almost crippling love of animals. Like, we knew it could hurt us to watch animal suffering. Yeah. And so I knew that about myself as well. And so when we watched that movie, I just remember like curling up into fetal position after watching that movie and just crying and like hating the world. And so my brother and I went vegetarian for like a week. But back then, like that meant like eating portobello mushrooms like every day. You know, there was just like nothing available. I mean, I know, Derek, you've been a long time vegetarian and so have you, Toby. So you obviously figured a way out of it. We didn't. And also growing up in a Korean household, it just wasn't like we weren't conversant in that kind of thinking and language. And so we gave up after like one too many portobello mushroom burgers. We're like, I can't do this anymore.
You would be dead, Toby. He hates mushrooms.
That's like all we ate for like a week.
It's good protein.
I love
Maybe that's something I need to like overcome soon. And really
I think
just
so,
step into the
man.
mushroom
Yes.
world.
Definitely. I think with, Amaz, they have a little mushroom you didn't know and you like it.
Yeah.
If you fry it, it'll taste good.
I'm sure you
Portobello
have
is-
ways to make it.
Yes.
Portobello is the mushroom. I
That
love
episode
it.
is why I went vegan on your podcast, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So,
And people can listen to that. And
right.
so,
Okay.
is it after you and your man split up that you change your life in a different direction?
That's actually very astute of you to predict. Toby, you know, you have like such nunchi. So I left my husband. We separated, my first husband, and
How long are you together?
we were together. See, I met him. So I started dating him my freshman year in college. So that would have been 1997.
Wow.
We separated in 2013, divorced in 2014. So we were together for some time. I mean, at that point, it was nearly half my life, right? Or maybe half my life. So after I separated from him, I took some time to just not care about fitness or health because I was so depressed and I was so sad and scared. But then at a certain point, I think in January of 2014, I decided, all right, I've been scrolling on Instagram and I saw some fitness influencer and I was like, I could do this. I gotta get my shit together. And I remember like my fiscal year at the firm ends in February. On February 1 is the beginning of the new fiscal year. So until like January, until I met my hours, there's a billable hours requirement at large law firms. Once I'd met my hours, I was like, okay, now I have no excuse. Like I really need to focus on my health. So that was when I decided to radically change kind of my view on what clean eating meant. Now, by that time, I had done yo-yo dieting. I had many plastic surgeries.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'd been through.
Really?
Oh, yeah, I'd been through a lot of different things when it came to body dysmorphic disorder, but I really wanted to try something sustainable, and that's when I started making some big changes. It wasn't sustainable. They were just as bad as all of the bad habits that preceded them, but at that time, I've probably never yo-yoed as severely as I did before then.
Wow.
Wow.
And did you have your food blog at that point? Or that's
No, I was like a lawyer. I was so lawyering so hard.
Were you happy being a lawyer? You happy?
No, I think
You
Well,
weren't living
before the divorce.
Right,
I'd say, were you
right.
happy? Did you have? You feel like you were living that dream life finally? Have you married? You working this job?
Yeah,
you love
security.
it sounded all wonderful. And in
Yeah.
many ways, I was happy to have my parents proud of me, and they were very proud of me. But they were also very worried about me because they knew I'd married the wrong guy, and yeah, they knew that from the beginning.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, they tried to get me to call off the wedding, like in a very serious way, and it turned into a humongous fight. And I just was like, yeah,
Whoa.
but like I think 3.5 months before the wedding, they're like, we really are begging you, please don't go through with this. He's not the right guy for you. So my parents are traditional, but that is a very non-traditional thing for my parents to do. So they were very worried about me, but I was happy that I could check off so many boxes for them, because for me, growing up, checking off my parents' boxes brought me so much joy. Wow. Not like necessarily in the best way. I almost feel like in a heroin addict kind of way.
Yeah.
Like I was addicted to their approval. And so having that kind of immense approval from them, at least on my career, was really important to me. And I was willing to suck it up and hate my life and live weekend to weekend for many, many years in
Make
order
them
to
happy for them.
exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, they did the same for me.
Yeah.
I mean, they sacrificed so much for me.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a divorce, and they're probably like, they didn't say "I told you so," but they were probably so happy that
They
you
were so happy.
Yeah.
They were so happy. They were happy, but they were sad for me too, because they saw how wounded I was by the whole thing, and they were also really angry for me. But my father, I'll never forget this. We were at a Korean barbecue restaurant. It was my birthday because I got divorced in the same month as my birthday. And we went out to dinner for my birthday. And before the kalbi got there, he like raises his glass and he goes, "Congratulations." And I was like, "For what?" He's like, "For the divorce." That is also not traditional Korean, very non-traditional for a father to tell his daughter, "Congratulations for finally leaving that husband."
Wow.
That's tough.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
rough. Divorce.
there's no such thing as a good divorce.
Right,
Even
right.
the most friendly
Yeah.
divorces are just awful.
Oh, was that like your
Awful,
first true
yeah.
love?
Yes. I mean, it was total encompassing. Like, I disappeared into that love.
Right.
Wow.
That's,
Anthony, he's cool. He's awesome.
Yeah, it's a very different kind of love. We're his birthday is coming up tomorrow, and so in honor of him, the podcast this week, which is live tomorrow, is all about our love story, and it does talk about kind of all the things that I learned from my first relationship about me, who I am, and kind of the pitfalls of codependency and how easy it is to fall into that and mix it up with love when it really isn't love.
Right. Very
I
interesting.
love that.
Yeah.
No pun intended. So then you're on social media and you're trying to do all these things. And what was your name on there back then?
I wasn't on social media.
Okay,
I was
looking
just
at
like
it.
the Korean, like I was just like the girl who like was on Instagram and lurking and kind of, you know, thing like that. But I wasn't no real account. Like it was a personal account. And then, you know, I started dating Anthony in 2014. We dated, we broke up, we got back together, and then he became vegan in 2016, and I subsequently joined him.
Wow,
Okay.
there we go.
All right. So yeah, that's I was waiting to hear like
So
how
you kind
did
of
it
did it together
all
around the same time. Yeah.
Basically, I mean, he preceded me by a couple weeks.
a couple weeks. Oh, okay. So I was gonna ask like, was it a long time before you like?
Nah, I knew like he wouldn't admit it at the time because he was like, you do whatever you want to do. You don't need to join me. And I was like, yeah, no, our relationship will not survive if I don't join you. It would be very hard because we weren't like a married couple.
Yeah.
I think it's different when you have some sort of foundation. We were still so new in our relationship. You know, we hadn't even said things like "I love you" or you know things like I don't think, but like we were just too new yet for us to have that sort of wedge spring up between us. And so ultimately I decided, okay, I guess I have to join him in this if I want to continue our relationship.
Was it hard for you to do it or?
No, it wasn't hard. Like the changing my brain and making it open to the possibility, that took a little work. Of course it did.
Yeah.
And he was really good about it. Like he made me watch all the movies
All
and
the proper docs.
exactly, you know, what was it? Food Inc. and Forks Over Knives,
What the
Cowspiracy.
Health. Right.
Well, What the Health didn't exist
Yeah.
at the time. This is 2016.
Earthlings.
Yeah. No, I don't think I could have.
It's heavy.
That's too hard for me. So he did all those things and we adopted a plant-based diet. And, you know, if you want to put a fine point on it, we did it for our health and the environment at first. So it was a plant-based diet. And, you know, a few months later was when I finally allowed myself to love animals in the way that I knew I always wanted to. And after that, then I would say we became vegan.
I love that. I never heard somebody say it like that. Like it was just for health, so you called it plant-based. And then when it becomes more for the animals and everything, then it's vegan. You know what I'm saying? The way she broke that down right now.
Right.
That was interesting.
Well, because I think plant-based is a diet. It's the way that you eat. And I think the way that you eat, you are making a substantial impact to animal suffering because it is the most consumptive of animal products, right?
Yeah.
But if you are doing this because of the animals and animal exploitation, then there are other aspects of your life that merit attention. Like I try to buy makeup that doesn't, you know, impact animals. It's not tested on animals. I, you know, got rid of all leather and things like that. And even our car, like we're like making sure like there's no leather in the car, you know, whatever we can do. And I think that's what I mean by veganism. Like it stopped being just a diet and it started becoming much more than that.
Yeah, that's more of a lifestyle.
I also think people, when they hear the word vegan, they're more taken back than you say I'm plant-based. That's like more like a softer way to say what
Unfortunately,
you know,
the
you know
word
what I mean?
vegan has
because there's a bad rep around that name. sometimes.
Absolutely.
There is. It makes people defensive.
extremely.
I think it is partly bad rap for sure, but I also think just naturally, like, people don't want to have to look at what's behind the things on their plate. They don't want to be confronted with it.
Which is crazy because it's going in your body and
Wow.
it's something that's every day that you
in your
need.
body's
But it's something that you need, to survive. It's like you would think that would be the most important thing.
But that's the thing
in your
is,
life,
I mean, we live in a world where the path of least resistance is often the one that we're told to select. And if,
Sure.
To the extent that we say, no, that path may not be the best for you, people are like, yeah, no, it's okay. It's more convenient for me to just continue taking that path.
How were your parents about you changing your diet? Like, were they tripped out about it?
No, they just thought it was a diet. They had seen me do this thing so many, like for years and years, and like, oh, she's just doing another diet. Good for her. They were like, yeah, anything that will keep our daughter skinny, we're all for. So that's originally what they thought. I think at a certain point, especially when I started long distance running, then they got worried. They're like, okay, like, are you eating enough? So they got worried. And then, of course, the protein, like, you're not getting enough protein.
That's the main question still. So what started long distance? What made you start running?
Well, I started running in 2014. Remember when I said that I made that radical change to try and eat in a more sustainably healthy way? I started running because I lived right next to Lake Michigan.
Beautiful.
And so I was like, I have no excuse. So I started running then, and it was like really slow and short distances, like not even a mile. And I continued to run a little bit longer, a little bit faster. And then, of course, I met Anthony in 2014, so about a year later. And he's an avid runner, and he encouraged me to sign up for my first race. And so I ran my first race in November of 2014. And after that, I was kind of addicted. You know how, like, when you get a tattoo, you're like, why am I doing this? And then when you get one, you're like, now I need 100 more. Like, I know that feeling. So I had the same feeling with racing. As soon as I did that first race, I was like, oh, well, now I need to run all the races.
I want that for running too, because I hate running and love it. When I start running and I start going and I love it, but then when I think about doing it, I'm like, but I really would love to do a marathon sometime in my life. Yeah,
you could do one.
100% sometime in my life, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely love the idea of it. I've always have, but I just had to get in my mind growing up that I just don't have the body frame for doing that for long periods of time. And it's unfortunate because I find so much joy in running when I was able to do long distances when I was younger but my body frame and it's just kills my knees. And after a while,
I just want to have it like on like a bucket list, like I did a marathon.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna ask, like, for you, it's more of not, is it for the race itself or just for the achievement of having it done?
It's definitely the achievement. Right. So I'm sure both of you have experienced this. You go out in the morning and you come back from a run and you just feel like you can conquer the world after that, even if it's just 3 miles. So imagine how you would feel at the end of a marathon. You cross that finish line and you feel like you literally can conquer the world. And that feeling is intoxicating.
Right on.
So how many have you done now?
I've done 5 marathons.
Wow.
So if I can run a marathon, there are very few people on earth who can't do it, because I remember the first time I saw a marathon in 2014, I just was like, dude, these people are crazy. Like, what are they doing? Like, this is really like insane. Like, I just thought it was totally nuts. I never dreamed in a million years that I would one day not just toe the line, but cross the finish line of a marathon. 5 marathons.
26 miles, right?
26.2. That point 2. Can't forget it. Trust me. Mile 26.
And so, like, eating after that too, just probably so hungry. It's
funny you should say that. I don't find myself hungry. What happens is when you subject your body to that much work and in some ways trauma, your body then says, oh, wow, we got to not focus on anything except providing energy to this woman's glutes, her hips, her feet, her muscles
Right.
because she's clearly like running for her life, you know? So
Right.
that's what your body thinks. So immediately after your race, you do not have the blood, the oxygen that would otherwise facilitate digestion. So your stomach is like not cool with food at
Wow,
that time. You're just like, I don't want to eat anything. Like, I feel like I'm going to throw up.
Okay.
So, and sometimes that can last for a couple days. I've noticed that after an intense long run, I'm usually not hungry day of, but the next day I'm
Yeah.
starving.
Yeah.
So people think, oh, like I'm going to eat a chocolate cake or like fried chicken, like right after I cross the finish line. Like, no, you're not. You're going to be like, I want some water and potato chips. Like, salt. Like, that's all I can think about is like, give me a bag of potato chips.
And do you ever walk it too during the thing? You run the whole time, everyone?
Sometimes I'll walk through the water stations because I don't want to bump into someone or like I
Yeah.
need to really drink the water.
Yeah.
And so I'll do that. But for the most part, I try really hard to keep a pretty steady pace the whole race.
Wow.
Yeah, I definitely can understand like after that.
Yeah, I
I
was
mean
thinking
after
about
a
that
show
also,
for some
yeah.
reason, I mean after a show I can't eat anything.
Yeah.
You know, it takes hours and hours.
Yeah, because your body has been doing the work to make sure you're there for your show.
Right,
Yeah.
And
right.
it doesn't have any more resources to be
Right.
like, all right, hey, we need to digest some food here.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So when you become vegan in Chicago, we talked about earlier, like just like the options out there. I know you started doing your food blog. Was that inspired by just trying to cook more vegan options?
In some ways,
Create your own stuff that you couldn't find?
exactly. It
Okay.
was that. And part of it was wrapped up in the fact that I was Korean, and the person who was encouraging me to adopt this very non-Korean diet, at least in my perception at the time, was a white man. And so I felt very threatened by that. I think that if Anthony had shown even just a modicum of interest in Korean culture and Korean cuisine, I may not have felt so resentful towards him about him asking me to go vegan. I'm like, you don't even know what you're asking me to give up.
Right.
You've never
point.
bothered, you know? And so even though I had significant misgivings that this white guy was, in my view, asking me to give up my culture, I decided to join him because I saw so much potential in our relationship. But the thing was, I was going to do it on my own terms, which
course.
meant that I had to figure out a way to veganize all the Korean food that I wasn't willing to give up. And that's why I
Right.
started the Korean Vegan.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
But to Anthony's credit, my now husband's credit, he was the one who was like, you should start a YouTube channel called The Korean Vegan.
It was all.
Yes. In many ways, I would not be sitting here without
Right.
him.
So how did that go when it first launched? It was a great reaction. Was it slow? Was it?
It was slow. It was like what you would think. I had no idea how to do videography. So it was
Yeah.
really hard. It would take me like 45 days to do one 5-minute video,
Wow.
you know, and I didn't know how to use video editing software and things
Right.
like that. I knew a lot about photography because I had to that point been taking a lot of pictures of myself and of landscapes and the cityscape. So I
Yeah.
knew somewhat about photography, but knew nothing about video. So that's why I quickly left YouTube and just focused on Instagram, which is a more photograph centric
Totally.
platform. And so I did that for many, many years, and, you know, kind of ho-hum. It grew a little bit here and there. Remember, I was by that time a partner at a large law firm. So it wasn't like I had like scads of time to devote to my social media presence.
Yeah. And then a TikTok blows up. A viral TikTok with you cooking braised potatoes and Anthony's playing piano in the back, right?
Yes, he is. He's giving a piano
How
lesson.
long are you on TikTok before that happens? Have you been on there for a minute?
Like, I think I'd been on there for like, I don't know, a few days.
Wow.
Like not very long. Like I had not been on
So
TikTok.
what was on the TikTok?
She's cooking. She's cooking some Korean braised potatoes. In
Potatoes.
there.
Yeah.
And
Andy's in the back playing piano.
yeah.
And so that blew up.
Yeah,
Like, how like
I think it has.
He needs help
Like-
with TikTok. He's really cute.
I know. I'm just scared. When people are
We
like,
talked
"Yo,
about
it blew-"
TikTok.
we
Are
talked
we
about
too old
the.
to
I
be
was
on
calling
there?
it Tic Tac.
Can we do something viral?
I was like, "Oh, the Tic Tacs." I think I got the Tic Tac
I feel like
going
we're kind of
on.
too old to be on unless we do something.
I think
really-
I'm way too old, but that's not
No,
true. Though.
you're
There are
not.
other people
Everybody's
that
on
I've seen
that.
on it.
Yeah.
So I just want to know, like, was it? So what was the music being played? Like, what drew people?
piano,
Like, oh
man.
my God, this nobody knows. Right?
I mean, it's really hard to predict.
Okay.
I guess I actually had been on there for like maybe a couple weeks. I was posting political content. And so I was not posting food content. I was just like talking about politics, and Donald Trump was trying to cancel TikTok at the time. So I was,
That's right.
yeah.
I remember.
And so I was the lawyer who was like being like, don't worry, guys, like
right.
he can't do this and da da da. And so like that's what I was doing for a while. And then one day I was like, I am a food content creator. Like I have an Instagram called The Korean Vegan. It's like, oh, I'll just put my phone up against the wall while I make these braised potatoes.
Okay.
And that was like one of our favorite things to eat at the time because we were both runners and high carb, it's really good. And so I just did that. Anthony's giving a piano lesson. You can hear him yelling at a student and then like banging on the piano. Like,
Wow.
So there was like nothing
Super
special
random,
about it.
yeah.
Very
Okay.
random. I didn't even know how to use TikTok very well at the time. You'll see the video and be like, this is
Okay,
horrible.
gotta check it out.
And then, it has like over 1.6 million views.
Wow.
It hit like 600,000 views in less than 24 hours.
That's crazy. I don't see that's the part
It
I
was-
So
don't
did
really
you see that
understand.
happening yet?
Yeah.
It happened instantly, or the next day you saw it, or just?
I think I started to get notifications on my phone and I was like, oh, like a lot of people, but I didn't really understand like what was happening. And then I checked it the next day and I was like, oh my gosh. And it was really kind of crazy. Yeah.
Wow. So that kind of puts you in like a new dimension on social media?
It did. You instantly gain a lot of followers from that. I remember I got into a little bit of trouble at work because of one of my videos had gone viral and it got onto a lot of legal blogs and the CEO found out about it. And I got contacted by the firm's PR firm and all that stuff. And I thought I was going to lose my job. So I called my mentor at work and I was like, Ellen, I don't know what to do. Like they're calling me about my TikTok account. I'm like, she's like, what do you mean? You just started. And I'm like, yeah. And I already have 38,000 followers. And she's like, she's like, how did that happen? Like you literally just started your TikTok account. And I was like, I don't know. This is like what happened. And so I grew really, really fast. It was exciting and all of those things that you would imagine, but it was also terrifying for a lawyer who worked a full-time job as a partner at a law firm to get so much attention so
you're a
quickly.
partner, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
So they were bummed that you were letting people know you were a lawyer and you were on TikTok talking about things.
Yeah,
like
what did they have
politics?
against it?
So I told, politics is, an issue,
Okay.
but beyond that, there was one post where I was a little snotty and it did involve my job. And so, and it wasn't directed at my employer. That was
Right.
not it at all. It was more like somebody was like, you don't look like you work very hard as a lawyer. And I took that lady down. And
Whoa.
I was very specific about exactly how hard I was working. That made it on all the legal blogs and forums. My CEO found out. And he's like, well, it sounded a little too condescending, Joanne. So they made me take it down.
They made you take it down?
Yeah, but then I put it back up.
And you're still there, so they love you.
Ex- Exactly.
Yeah, and your partner.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So how does your life change from that as far as like wanting to do to do your book, your vegan cookbook?
So I actually had a book deal already. That was one of the reasons I started a TikTok was because my publisher kind of was like nudging my lit agent, like, what's Joanne's social media plan for when the book comes out? And I was like, well, like all these kids are on TikTok, I should at least check it out. Like I don't necessarily have to create food content, but I should at least be aware of like what's out there.
Yeah.
So by that time, my manuscript had already been submitted. It was done. Like I was working on it, like revising it, but like the big work had already been done. And so TikTok then became a very big part of the marketing and PR strategy for the book once my Korean vegan thing kind of, catapulted into what nobody would have imagined.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How soon did that book come out after you went viral?
So I went viral in July. Well, I started my TikTok account in July of 2020. My book came out in October of 2021. So I had well over a year to really get the brand out there and build buzz around the Korean vegan. And, my publisher was like, over the moon about this because from their perspective, like they paid for somebody who had 37,000 followers on Instagram. Like that's when they signed me.
Yeah.
And by the time they were selling the book, I had, 2 million followers on TikTok and hundreds of thousands of followers on YouTube and Instagram.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it became a New York Times bestseller.
It did.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I
man.
know. It's
That's
really
insane.
What does that even mean to
amazing.
the listeners? Like, what does that mean?
You know, it's
It's a big deal.
It's
It's-
digital
it's- yeah.
sales.
it was
Is it based on that?
It was based upon pre-orders for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so there were a lot of pre-orders, of course, that helped, and all of those things get built into that number. But at the end of the day, and I know you have many New York Times bestselling authors and platinum record holders and stuff like that. So like there are a lot of people who will be like, it doesn't mean what it means. But for me, it was important because in July of 2021, like right after I met Rich for the first time, I sat down with my publisher and I sat down with my PR team and I was like, we're going to make the fucking New York Times bestseller list if I have to do everything in my power to do it. This is a goal that I want to achieve and we're going to make it happen. And so it wasn't an arbitrary thing, but for me, it was important to execute on a goal that I had selected for myself. And there were a lot of ups and downs along the way, but ultimately it meant that much more to me.
And you find it out pretty quick that you are a bestseller when it comes out? Like when a record drops, the first week sales or something?
Exactly. It's in
Okay.
that first week.
Wow. Your parents, what are your parents at that point?
They don't understand. They really don't understand anything. They were just like really upset that I decided to withdraw from partnership at my firm. That was really weighing on them. Yeah.
Okay.
So I knew after meeting Rich Roll in June.
Shout out to Rich Roll.
Yeah, like his career path was so inspiring to me because he had been a big lawyer and ultimately took a leap of faith. And it coincided in some degrees with his decision to go plant-based as well. So after talking to him, I just felt so inspired. And shortly after doing that, I called my boss and I was like, look, I'm just not going to do this anymore. I'll stay on an of counsel capacity, just really to make sure that we transition my matters to the right people. And in case you guys have questions, and mostly for PR purposes. But beyond that, I'm not going to really do very much. My mom was really unhappy about that decision.
Sure, yeah.
Wow. So the LA Times, New York Post, Rich Roy did obviously Food Network, CNN, Kelly and Ryan did so much press after this blew up.
It did. And that was really, really fun. It was nerve-wracking too. I know we were talking about before I'm very stage frighty. I get super bad stage fright, but it was a great learning opportunity for me. It was a great growth opportunity. And of course, it helped tremendously with the book.
Yeah, and you do speaking events. You do all kinds of stuff now.
I do. I do a lot of speaking events. In fact, I'm going to Chicago this week to do one for a client, and I'm really excited.
Yeah, Chi-Town.
Yeah.
That's amazing. What about what is one of your favorite dishes to make?
So definitely the jjajangmyeon, which is on the cover of the book.
Yep.
That is a dish that my father loves. And, a lot of times your favorite dish isn't just the thing that tastes delicious to you. It's also the thing that's steeped in memory and nostalgia. And it was always like when my mom had to work on Sundays, that meant that we didn't have to go to church. And that was really always the best. And my dad never liked going to church. So he I think he rebelled at a certain point. He's like, I'm not going to church anymore. And so when my mom had to go to work on Sundays, my dad would always take me and my brother out to lunch. And because we weren't at church, and he would always take us to the Chinese Korean restaurant, and he would get 2 orders of jjajangmyeon, 1 bowl for himself and 1 bowl for me and my brother to split between us. And so those are always such special Sundays for us. And so there's a lot of that kind of wrapped into why I love jjajangmyeon. I certainly love making it for my dad now. That makes me so happy. But, just beyond that is an absolutely delicious dish.
Yeah, and your parents love that they're into vegan food. They try stuff. They're open-minded to it.
They're definitely open-minded to it. When my mom cooks it, my dad probably can't even tell that it's vegan. The other day they were at my house and my mom made just a huge batch of puchinge, which is a Korean savory pancake. And it was vegan, and she made just so much. And as soon as I walked into the house, my dad turns his head and he's like, your mommy, she made the best puchinge. It is vegan.
That's incredible.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
You opened their minds up to that. That's so cool.
It is. It's
what about
good.
would you do another book?
I'm working on my second book right now. I was thinking about it this morning. I'm like, what am I gonna write in my introduction? Like, what is that, bait going to be to lure people into book 2?
I mean, how did you discover your publisher in the first book that you did? Like, how did
That's a good
you
question.
bait them into, like, I got a Korean vegan cookbook, and where they're like, you're out of your mind?
I know. Like,
That's a
I
great
was
question.
kind of like, who would want to make a
Right.
book out of this? But, and I didn't really have any ideas, like, of creating a book that wasn't, I was a lawyer, I was
Right.
working
Yeah.
very hard at the time, but I was on Instagram and I followed this account called Best of Vegan, which is a vegan sharing account. So they don't create their own original content. What they do
just
is
grab.
they take another person's content and they feature them. And they have over 2 million followers on Instagram.
Got it.
So it's a wonderful thing to be featured on Best of Vegan.
yeah.
That's the vegan. Okay,
Exactly.
I'm gonna check it out.
Oh yeah, the food is wonderful. And she's coming out with a cookbook as well.
Okay.
And so anyway, I followed her and I was so excited when Best of Vegan followed me back. And I remember like she liked one of my posts and it had 200 likes and I was just so excited. And I know. And so one day she reached out to me, like literally wanted to talk to me on the phone and invited me to a food festival with her. And I was like, I remember like when we got on the phone, I'm like, I just want to make sure that you intended to ask me, not somebody else.
Yeah.
'Cause
Right.
she was famous and I was not. And she was like, no, I know who you are. I love your account. And I was like, okay. I had like maybe 10,000 followers at the time. And we became friends. And it turned out the reason she loved my account so much was because of my writing. So unlike many vegan food accounts, I didn't put recipes in my Instagram captions. I would put stories about my family,
Yeah.
about my parents and my grandparents growing up as an immigrant in the United States. And so she really enjoyed my writing. And eventually she had a huge book deal, obviously because she's like huge on Instagram. And she was like to her agent, hey, I have a friend. You should probably check her out. And he checked me out and he was interested in working with me. We worked for a year on a book proposal. We got it out. And within a week, we had an offer from one of the biggest publishing houses in the country.
Wow, that's incredible.
That's amazing.
It is. Just goes to show like putting yourself out there in a way that's different might be kind of risky. And I'm sure both of you
Yeah,
can
for
relate
sure.
to this. Like, we want to do something that's truer to us artistically, but may not be commercially the most strategic move. And I certainly felt that way because my work is very dark, moody. My photography wasn't bright and saturated and colorful. It was more like kind of unsaturated and dark.
Did you do a lot of the photos for the book?
I did the whole book.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's-
so I did
that's
all the
great.
photography for the book.
It looks incredible.
Yeah.
It looks really, really.
But
I love
yeah,
it.
and
Style.
it was also because I didn't put recipes on. She
Yeah,
didn't
interesting.
actually feature me very much on Best of Vegan because I didn't put recipes.
Yeah, I was
but
going to say, so
yeah.
many people are always asking, what is
Was
the
the
recipe?
recipe exactly
What's in there?
And I was just like, too bad, sorry, wrong account. And I would just be like, I'm going to put stories out there. And it was because of that I was noticed by someone. And it was because of that I got my book deal. I mean, they really were like, her photographs are nice and her recipes are cool, but we just love her writing.
Yeah. How much has your life changed since the book?
Well, I withdrew from partnership at a law firm that I was with for 17 years.
That's a radical
Like
change.
as far as like things you can do, because like you never ran before. You started doing. I did 5 marathons.
Yeah.
Now you turn your life around, your diet, and then you put a cookbook out. You never really cooked growing up. I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
So I would say prior to going vegan, like the big accomplishments in my life were essentially getting a divorce, right? That was the biggest thing. And I was told my current husband, he would ask me like, what is the thing that you're most proud of? And for me, it was always exiting that relationship because it was the hardest thing I ever did. And so in some ways, I feel like before going vegan, I was just climbing to survive. I just needed to get out of the hole that I found myself in to get at level ground.
Yeah.
Once I went vegan, it was almost like now I'm not just at level ground. I'm actually climbing a mountain to get above sea level, to see from the top. And so in the beginning, like I say, before I went vegan, I almost felt like I needed to make up so much ground that I had lost. Whereas now I feel like, affirmatively pursuing joy, which is a very different feeling. And yeah, it's wonderful. It's very life affirming. But the work that I did in order to simply get to the point where I could believe that I deserved joy was very important for me to get to where I am right now.
Yeah. You actually, besides, it seems like you were trying to please your parents for so long, and now it's like, please yourself. Make
Yes.
yourself happy with it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just...
It is. That's very true. And that can be very scary for someone who lives off the approval of their parents and people around them. Identifying what brings joy to you independent of that can be a little bit jarring and scary at first, but ultimately is very, very liberating. And if your family loves you, like at the end of the day, my mom and my dad love me. Yes. So they're not going to be like, no, you have to stay in this job that you hate and, sucks your soul dry. Like they're not going to do that, So, and they're definitely very proud of me.
Of course.
I don't know that they really understand what I do yet. And most people actually don't anyway. So that's not very different, but they're very happy for me.
Do you feel like you still want to seek their approval with things moving forward in your life?
I think the biggest thing that I was always worried about was whether my choice to not have children, or whether you can call it a choice or something, might cause them a little bit of disappointment. I don't think it does. My mom was always the first person to be like, don't have kids. So, I don't know that it does, but it did. That did cause me a little bit of hesitation. And certainly we had a very hurtful conversation when I told her that I was withdrawing from the firm. I mean, I was crying and it was not great. But she's over it now, and we're good, and she's very proud of me. So that kind of compulsive need to please my parents has definitely mellowed quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I read a couple of things about having children and after your divorce and stuff, and you were saying like you're not anything less without children, and you don't have to be defined by having children as a woman.
Yeah.
I love that too.
It's something that I often have to say to myself. I think a lot of people think, oh my God, this Korean vegan, Auntie Joanne, she has her shit so together. Like she's giving all this great advice. And sometimes...
freezing your eggs too, sorry.
Freezing my eggs. I think a lot of people don't realize that I say these things to other people because it forces me to repeat them to myself.
I love that.
It's really hard for me sometimes to believe that my womanhood is no less important because I don't have children, because I was raised to believe that that was a woman's job. And so, I come from a very traditional conservative household in that way, even though my mom was like, don't have kids. It's very weird. But still, she was like, don't have kids, but you're going to have kids, kind of like that. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to rewire yourself. And I have to continue to tell myself, no, you're affecting a lot of people's lives with what you're doing right now.
Of course. Is your brother married with children?
Yes, he has a beautiful, just like the most perfect son. And that was the other thing. I don't know if you felt this way when you had your respective kids, but growing up, because my mom was always poo-pooing having children, I never was really interested in kids. And I was always like, maybe I just don't have that maternal instinct. I'm never that girl who's like, oh, can I hold your baby? I'm always like, no, thank you. So that was always me. And then my nephew was born, and all of a sudden it was like, I have to protect this person from everything in the world, including his parents, And I was like, his parents are idiots. And so I was so protective. And it's just a wonderful thing to love another human being that unconditionally.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
It's definitely life-changing.
It's intense.
I never thought.
It's really,
unless you really have children, you don't know exactly what she's saying. That's that unconditional love, which your parents had for you and still have for you your whole life, that maybe comes off overprotective and super strict, but it's this pure love and they want the best for you. They want to keep you safe forever.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? I feel that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that my son getting older and that leaving the nest syndrome stuff and all that that. I'm getting emotional talking about just you know what I mean, that connection you have and that bond, and that it's beautiful. Yeah,
it is beautiful, especially seeing you with Max. I think most people that I've talked to who know you and Max are always talking about just how uniquely beautiful your relationship with your son is. It's not something that I see very often, and it's very well done. A+.
Thank you.
I have to definitely give it up for Moon for
Oh, she
Really?
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having 2 kids and having to deal with that toll
I'll
can
take
be.
that. I'll take that.
But it's a beautiful thing. In the end of the day, it's definitely something I noticed too. That's
Thank you,
remarkable.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky. I found my soulmate and
Yes.
made a baby with her on purpose. You know what I mean? Out of pure love. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And want it. There's some people that can't have children.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's
Yeah.
people that have children and don't even care that they have children.
Yeah.
There's people that really want it and can't. And I feel that and I see that. And so I'm very lucky and blessed to. I hate saying the word blessed, but I am blessed to have the life that I have.
Yeah,
and the
no
wife
doubt. I would
and the
say
son
it
that
for
I
you.
have.
Yeah.
I'll say
Yeah.
it for you.
You are blessed.
Yes, you
Now
are
I'm
blessed,
getting
Toby.
emotional. Well,
You are
let's take it to the 30-day toast challenge, which
Oh.
you're doing right now, which
Oh my
30-day what?
toast
Toast?
challenge. But
Toast?
I'm gluten-free right now,
You
so
can have gluten-free
it's
toast.
hard to find good bread.
So what's this toast
She's doing the
challenge?
challenge right now.
Wait, I'm
I had
totally
to flip this whole thing from like emotional dad to her toast challenge.
But
right
then
now.
my ears just peaked up. I was like, I love toast.
'Cause I love toast.
I love
Yes.
toast too.
You
I
can
know.
find good gluten-free vegan bread. You can.
Give me brands off the top of your
No,
head.
but I remember like Anthony was gluten-free for 4 months.
Okay,
And
talk to
so
Anthony,
yeah,
yeah.
so we had to do that. There was one brand that we really liked that
It's hard to find.
we did
Yeah.
have to special order it. And it had to be directly delivered to
From
our
another
house.
country?
No, but
Because
I
bread
think
in
it's,
Europe is amazing.
yeah. Oh, it's
Incredible.
different. Like
Oh,
because
yeah.
Respect to America's bread.
the
But
wheat is
bread
different.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
it's
bread
just
in America is horrible. I'm sorry.
it can
Okay.
be. If you make your own sourdough, I imagine
Yeah,
your
if you're
stomach would
make-
probably be okay with it. But especially if the flour is from Italy or France.
There you go.
Yeah, that's what I
0.
often do.
So you're-
Exactly.
So you're a big
Yes.
toast person. Obviously, you're doing this
Yeah,
challenge.
let's
So
get
I
back into
really like
toast.
toast because it's convenient.
Yes.
And also I have a lot of issues with eating and struggling with eating essentially.
Okay.
And toast is like a really convenient thing for me because I feel like, okay, it's simple to make. I know exactly what is in the food,
100%.
you know, and like I'm not putting like a lot of things on it. It's not like overly complicated. For me, there's nothing better than a piece of, whole wheat or sourdough bread with a little bit of raw garlic on it and
I saw you make that.
and a quarter of an avocado, some sea salt. That's it. Done. I mean, I could eat that every single day. And that's what I was doing. I was literally eating that every single day because it was just so delicious. And I decided to do this 30-day toast challenge on YouTube because like that's what they like on YouTube. They're like, ooh, what is she going to do next?
Is it
And
hard
so-
to have 30 different ones?
yeah, it is hard. That's the challenging aspect of it because for me, I would just eat avocado toast every day.
Me too. And I shout out to Green Table. They have the best avocado toast, gluten free, and they have like pesto underneath it.
Oh my
And I just started adding
gosh.
tomatoes to it, which
Yep.
I'm gonna get today. It's incredible, the tomatoes on the avocado.
If you
toast.
get like really good heirloom or Campari tomatoes, I like a little bit on the sweeter side, so I like heirlooms and Campari tomatoes. You slice those up, get a little bit of balsamic on that. I mean, it is unreal. I mean, even some fresh basil kind of
Right,
on
yeah,
top of that.
definitely the basil.
So good. To me, that's a great, snack. It's a great breakfast. I eat a lot of
And it's good
avocado
that- it's
toast
good
for
It's the
breakfast.
fats too, like the avocado fats.
Exactly.
It's great for you. It's healthy.
Good carb.
Yeah,
It's a
I mean,
clean carb.
If you can tackle the bread situation, like I know a lot of people are gluten intolerant
Yeah.
or refined wheat, especially in the United States, is a little bit uncomfortable for people and their tummies. I get that, which is why I always opt for sourdough because the fermentation process does help with that a little bit. So if you can do that, then you can really make this a very nutrient dense meal that packs in the calories for you. Sometimes you can add a little bit of tofu if you want some protein, or of course beans. That's another great option
Yeah.
for a toast. So that's why I'm doing this
Right.
30-day toast challenge. It's really fun, and it's making people who always associate me with sad, depressing, really emotional stories see another side to me. Like, oh, she's funny. She understands meme culture. She can do recipes. Like, she's
Yeah.
got good ideas.
Yeah, it's amazing. What day are you on now for that?
I am on day. I finished 6 days. I have 7 and 8 in the can already, so I'm gonna be pushing those later this week, and then I've got ideas for the rest of them. I was going through my comments on YouTube from my last toast video, and there was this woman from India, and she's like, please try Indian potato toast. I'm like, okay, Indian food, potato, toast.
Yeah,
done.
I'm totally sold already
Yeah.
on that.
So I'm really excited about that one.
So do you check your comments?
Oh, yeah.
You read everything?
Oh, you do?
I don't read everything. Obviously, I get way too many comments to read them all.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that building community is not only a strategic thing to do, but it can definitely help with some of the other negative and toxic aspects of being a content creator.
Yes.
Leaning into those who are really interested and engaged with the content that I create is very helpful in fending off some of the, imposter syndrome issues and also just racist comments.
I was going to ask
you
you.
that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, yeah.
No, go ahead.
Well, just the negative. Yeah. Do you deal with negative comments? Do you respond to people? Do you check your DMs? Do you respond to anything like that? You give it any of your time?
I do.
Wow.
I think I have a different stance on it right now than I did even like 3 months ago. I think 3 months ago, I was still so emotionally charged about my content, which isn't surprising if you look at my content.
Mm-hmm.
There are always very revealing, emotional, vulnerable stories about my life. So when people commented, I'm going to get emotional. I think that at a certain point, I really had to have this come to Jesus moment where I was like, and I'm sure both of you have had to deal with this too. I mean, you get all sorts of critics of your music and your art and your talent and your skill and all of those things. And at a certain point, you just had to be like, you know what? I know who I am. And I know I'm fucking good at this. And I'm just not going to listen to this anymore. If somebody has a problem with me, that's their problem. Like, I'm not going to make it mine as well. And I really had to adopt that mindset. Mm-hmm. So now I'm a bit more dispassionate when I respond to a comment. If it's overtly negative, I just ignore it or I block them. If it's racist, I just block them, right?
Yes.
If it's like kind of on the fence, like this morning, somebody was like, I did this video on, what veganism means to me. And I always boil it down to do the least amount of harm, which is, obviously a precept of Buddhism and many other Eastern philosophies, right?
Yes.
And so I did that. And she goes, you say do the least amount of harm, and yet you're eating tofu made out of soybeans. And I was like, oh my God, I can't deal with this. And
feelings too.
yeah, I know.
I
was just like, I can't, so I went through a 4-part argument on why this was so stupid. And I didn't let myself, I didn't hold myself back. I was like, this is so stupid for these reasons, first, second, third, fourth. And then I basically called it racist at the end. Because I was like, I don't know which angle you're trying to come at me from. Like, it can come from a lot of different places, but I'm going to cover all of them just in case you're one of them. Wow. And so those types of things I'm now able to do without causing too much emotional harm to me. I think a few months ago, it would have ruined my day.
So we're like one negative comment out of 1,000 great ones. It's so true. It's so crazy. Man.
We just, I listen to Rich a lot on his podcast, and there was one thing that has stuck out to me so much, and I think about it in my work a lot. And I'm sure the two of you also think about it unconsciously, which is human beings have evolved to respond 13 times more to negative content than positive content. So they're going to engage way more often if something they see makes them afraid, makes them angry. And so that's the kind of content that's actually doing really well. The things that cause you to be mad, that cause you to get tribal, to divide from people and to say, no, it's you, and point the finger, right? Cancel culture, all of those things. Yes. And so there is that sort of incentive out there for me to buy into that and to appeal to that sort of human instinct. But conversely, as a consumer of content, I'm also driven by that same instinct, So when I see a negative comment or when I see something that makes me mad, I'm far more likely to zero in on it and respond to it than if I see somebody saying, oh my God, I love your content. I went vegan because of you. Okay, that's great. But I'm not going to say anything in response to it. But if somebody says, you're hurting the soy, then yeah, you're going to get me. You know what I mean? Oh
no. Yeah. Cause I know that with Toby, there were a lot of times, there were times where you're a very emotional person. Yes. I love that about you. And I knew that you had some trouble when certain people would write comments or maybe one person. I was like, man, don't let that get into your head. And I realize that it's difficult for a lot of people. And for me, I mean, I honestly, there is no way in hell that I'm spending my time like responding, and it's exactly what they want. One little bit of your attention, to suck that out of you. And I
out
really,
of your day, your precious time.
Absolutely. And so I reverse this, like, you know what? I don't know these people. These are absolute strangers.
It's true.
So
It's
when I
true.
look at it that way, it's like, why would I be upset? Why this person has no significance in my life? Those positive comments, though, I love those, and they're hard to believe at times. I'm like, wow, you really changed, my perception of something or something. But I had to, really go into like responding to those people, and that feedback is so much more nourishing, But in my mind, it's just block next. I don't spend any amount of time on any negative comments, and the ones that do come through, and it's like, honestly, I feel so good about that. And I just really would love to help people more to be like, get off of that. There's so many more positive comments that are out there, and building that, is something that's so, I think, important for people to really, it's like those are strangers that are giving these comments, and they want any attention. But there's certain things, like, of course, there's certain things I've seen. I'm like, oh my God. I even did a test of putting a photo, and I take a lot of photos and photographer.
You're a great photographer, man.
Thank you. And on tour, I saw this one photo, and I was like, man, I wish I would have taken that photo because it's just drawn me in. And it was a photo I was telling you about. It's like a church, and then there's two ladies, and one is cleaning like a huge chandelier, and the other is cleaning like a Jesus statue, and it's an old photo. I didn't write anything on the post. I just wrote like Austria photo, not by me. Took a photo. Boom. Hundreds of comments. People just getting super fearful and aggressive. And
About what?
About religion?
About religion.
Wow.
Mostly Christians are like, you're going to hell for posting this. You should really accept Jesus. You're trying to bring out, some type of response. Why are you posting this? Why, like all these, but I didn't write anything. I wrote nothing. And it was just interesting seeing the comments that people
really
had, from fear to misunderstanding, creating their own scenario about the photo.
Why would Derek post that?
Why would he post it? What's happening in the photo? The things that they made up that weren't true at all. And people are like, oh yeah, I see that. The Nazis were doing stuff in that time period, and they were completely, and I was like, no, that's not what the photo is about. I haven't written what the photo is about, but what it was a day before Easter, and they were cleaning everything in the church. That's it, for the celebration.
Wow.
It had nothing satanic about it. It had to do with cleaning all the items in the church that needed to be cleaned for the Easter celebration. That's it.
Wow.
No conspiracy behind it, but people created one, which was scary. They were like, oh, this is because they were all a huge thing, and people believing into it, and it just kept building and growing.
Nothing. That's so.
And I wrote nothing, and it was honestly about the celebration of Christ and the church, and everything has to be clean.
Service.
Service.
Yes.
Exactly.
My question to the people who take time out of their day to hate on people, they're actually trying to make the world a better place. Like, what have you done? Have you ever wrote a song? Have you ever cooked anything? Have you ever inspired anybody? Have you ever done anything to make this world a better place? But yet you take time out of your day. And we're only here like temporarily. You have all this time. You take your precious time to write a negative thing to a person you don't know. It's really sad.
They're obviously hurting, and they have a problem.
And I feel bad for people. I'm a sense of, like, I feel other people's pain. If something happens across the world, I feel that pain. I'm a very open book. I wear my heart on my sleeve, very compassionate person. And I feel all that stuff, even negative or positive. Like, I'm like, I actually feel bad for that person. Like, why would you write that? You don't even know me. And then sometimes if you do write back, they go, oh my God, I can't believe you wrote back. Oh man, I didn't mean that. I just want to get
Oh my God,
Yeah,
I totally,
yeah.
Like, that's how you approach somebody. Like, and I know people are nervous when even on Instagram, like, what are they going to write to this person? Will they see it or not? Like, but to take that time, that energy, man, it's just.
It's a lot of
sad,
energy,
man, you know
and it is sad.
I think that there is a lot of what you were describing, Derek, which is projection, right?
Yes.
Like they don't know how to process their own trauma or their pain or anger, so they do it in these like little It's kind of like when a dog is like pooping all over the house. They like deposit their shit all over the place, little bits and pieces. And they do it in the comments. Like they deposit themselves there. So they create these elaborate stories like in their heads about what it all means. And the lie, of course, is that there's some sort of consistent thread throughout social media that ties it all together for them, instead of, no, you just have to do the fucking work. Do the work, introspection, look at your own life, look at the mirror and figure out where is your trauma manifesting in a way that's bringing you so much anxiety or pain. I think the other thing that's interesting about what you said, Toby, is that you are an empath. And I do think that when you are empathetic, think about it. When you walk into a room full of 40 people, right? Empaths can't help but absorb the energy around them, whether it's good or bad. For me, and that's why I think you have so much nunchi, right? Is because
nunchi, by the way, she's gonna tell you about it.
Nunchi is kind of like emotional intelligence, right? In Korean, it's a broad word, hard to describe, but the reason your nunchi is so fast is because you have this talent at knowing when the other person is uncomfortable, and your immediate reaction is, oh, I got to do something to make them feel comfortable. I don't want this person to be uncomfortable around me because that makes me uncomfortable, right? It's like kind of like mirroring. So when I go into a room full of 40 people, I automatically, like, my brain is like already like processing, okay, like how do I make everyone happy? So I hate getting into elevators with people because I'm like, I'm just tired. I don't want to have to think about everybody else's feelings. But now there's an elevator and now I have to think about everybody else's feelings in this elevator. Well, magnify that by millions when you're on social media. I'm, like I have to absorb all the energy of the people who are commenting and engaging with my content. And you're right, 90% of the time, it's wonderful. Yeah. It's totally empowering and it really fills me with hope. But there's like that 10% where I also have to absorb that, to a certain degree. In order to allow me to be open to the 90%, I have to open the door to the 10% who will come in and try and make a mess out of my house, shit all over my house, right?
That's a great point.
I mean, that's what happens. And so you got to take the good with the bad a little bit, but sometimes the bad can be extra overwhelming because they're in your fucking house. They're in your heart.
And not everybody's going to like us or love us, and they're not supposed to. We're not supposed to. You can never
exactly.
Yeah.
So that it's an impossibility that everyone's going to like you in life.
That's true. That's a hard lesson for some.
What trips me out is the people that don't even like you, but they follow you, and that just really trips me out, man.
It's okay. You don't have to worry about it.
Because they like not liking you. Yeah. That's why.
But they want to follow you just to watch. I don't know, man.
Some of them do want to just watch you fail.
Yeah. That exists. And then I had a question.
That makes me want to go harder than whatever.
That's awesome.
When you decided you were going to do Korean dishes, and did you have a backlash from the Korean community?
Yes,
that's a great
that were like, oh my God, these are traditional Korean dishes because there are no animals in there.
Yeah, I definitely had to deal with that. That's a great question. And it remains one of the sore points. Like people get triggered by different things. And that is definitely one of the things that triggers me. When I was in college, I was surrounded by Korean people. Like all my friends were Korean or Asian American, and I felt very much a part of the Korean American community. Then when I went to law school, like all the Korean people, like they were gone. Very few Korean people. In my law firm, I was the only Korean American attorney in my office for most of my career. So I felt very isolated from the Korean community. And I felt like going vegan would isolate me even more. Like, I not only am I dating a white guy, like now I'm going to adopt a white diet. Like that's what I was worried about.
White diet.
Yeah, that's what it, but I mean, it's all misconceptions. I agree. Absolutely. It's all stereotypes, but that's all I knew right at the time. And I knew because I had that stereotype at that time that many people like me would also have that stereotype. And so I became very sensitive to that. And sure enough, many people were like, well, if there's no fish sauce in your kimchi, is it really kimchi? Like you're not Korean because you don't eat Korean barbecue, which is laughable, right? Especially since I described to you like how very rarely we had Korean barbecue growing up. So like it's totally stupid and it's wrong, but I still see it all the time. Like I was just on Twitter a month ago, and a very popular Asian blogger, he basically wrote, hey, if you're Asian and you go to a Chinese restaurant, you can't get mad at them if they put meat in your vegetarian dish. And I'm like, what? Like, if I see something on the menu and it says vegetarian and I order it and there's meat in it, why am I not allowed to complain about that? Like, and they were basically like, because that's just, tradition, and like, they should not be forced to cater to your diet. And I'm like, look,
don't put it on the menu.
Yeah, then don't put it on the menu. Like, I think if it's wrong on the menu, like, and also, like, why do I have to apologize for wanting something that's a vegetarian option at a Chinese restaurant? I mean, are you like so clueless about Buddhist Chinese cuisine that you don't even realize that Chinese people have been doing, quote, vegan food for millennia? Like, what? Like, it's so embarrassing, the level of education of our own cultures in diaspora, in Asian diaspora. And that's something that I had to really confront myself, because I was that embarrassing person right before I went vegan. I was so uneducated about Asian cuisine, Korean cuisine, the history and tradition of Buddhist cuisine, plant-based cuisine in Asia. I mean, if you want to find like the best meat alternatives, I don't even know if you can call it that, right? Because I don't know that they're alternatives so much as these are just basic dishes. Exactly. Then you got to go to Asia. Like, literally, I remember when I was in Korea, I ordered jjajangmyeon, which is my favorite dish, right? And it was vegan. And they sent it to me and I sent it back. I was like, there's meat in here. I told you I wanted vegan. And the owner looked at me and he was like, I don't know what you mean. This is vegan. And my mind was blown. And I was like, this is what they can do. This is what we're missing in the United States.
I agree.
And so, yeah, there's a lot of that. And I sometimes feel very insecure about that still. It was one of the reasons I went on TikTok, because I knew that there were a lot of Korean Americans on there. And it was also one of the reasons I didn't start by posting food, because I didn't want people to know that I was vegan. But I still started as the Korean vegan. There are a lot of contradictions in my life.
I'm sure you inspired a lot of Koreans to go vegan or try these.
At least try. Sure. At least try. I think that a lot more people are like, oh, well, I guess I can make kimchi jjigae without the pork this time. Or I could try a mushroom broth. Or I can try dashima instead of, shrimp or something like that.
Wow. It's intense because, oh, yeah. I mean, I can definitely relate to the fact that where it's like, oh, you're going on a white diet. And it's just like, I had a lot of like people that would come to me, younger, and they're like, how is it that, you're not going to eat, like chicken and this and that and different dishes and just really getting kind of upset. And it made me feel kind of like, I don't know, weird about the whole thing. Like
you weren't doing the right thing kind of, or no?
No, I always felt that I was doing the right thing. But then I started doing research on a lot of the food where they're like, this is our culture, this is what, this is where we came from. And I was like, no, it actually is not where we came from. It's like a lot of people in the world don't eat meat. Yeah. It's expensive, like you were saying. And this I started to learn from traveling everywhere. And there are a lot of places that are like, no, it's a rarity that we ever have meat. And actually in Asia, before the Westerners even came there, it wasn't even in anything, actually.
It was fish.
Yes, it was only fish. Until they came in with the idea of like, hey, we got cow, we got beef, it became something very very like, oh my God, this is above and beyond. But majority of the world aren't eating as much meat as like Western civilizations, and the majority of the world, they can't afford meat. It's not affordable.
Well, what I think is so interesting about what you described, Derek, especially the research that you undertook on, well, what are the origins of my particular cuisine? What I've seen as a vegan over the past few years is this growing interest in plant-based food in the Black American community. And that makes me feel so like empowered. Like I feel so inspired by that, because in many ways, if you think about how the lack of accessible health care for the Black American community has been such a deathly form of oppression for the Black American community. And now you're seeing them saying, no, like, fuck no, we're taking our health back, Yeah, and if that means we can't get affordable health care, then we'll just start eating better and not have to rely on health care in the United States. We're going to attack it on the front end. And so when I see people like Pinky, for Slutty Vegan, or Tabitha Brown, who are, not like sitting there being preachy about it, but just saying, hey, if you want to take ownership of your health because they are trying to take it from you, let me show you how to do that in a nice, non-threatening, non-judgmental, approachable way. And I see so much power in that. And I think that's so inspiring. And I love that story. And I feel like it can be a template for many other immigrant or oppressed communities to say healthcare, if we think about it, is one of the most dangerous forms of oppression in our country. So what can we do in order to turn it on its head?
Well said.
I love that.
Man.
I mean, shout out to the badass vegan John Lewis for the
I
Trying
love
to Kill Us
him.
documentary, which was that was all about. Also, Kevin Hart just opened up a vegan plant-based space over here in Sepulveda Boulevard.
It's great to see that.
It's amazing.
Because, I mean, it's definitely a change. I mean, from growing up and seeing we're creating this soul food and everything. And my father grew up in the South, and he was a cook. And I mean, I remember all those Southern dishes, like chitlings and things like that. And I was just like disgusted as a kid. But I was just like, this is not, like once I started to do a little bit of history, I was like, this is not our culture, really. I was like, this is a necessity that happened because of, slavery and being in the position where this is what we're left with. This is what you have left to eat, and this is what we're giving you. And so creating these dishes. But it's moved on beyond that, and it's great to see that people are definitely getting around their health, where that's big changes that are happening that I never would imagine, because before I got made fun of, from all walks of life, not only just, people like, oh, you're a freak, you're not eating this, what's wrong, but also from the Black community, where I thought, like, hey, we're all in this together. And then it was like, oh my God, you're eating like white food and just like stupid comments like that.
Kale salad.
That's all that tofu.
It's just like, what?
We didn't even have kale salads back then or quinoa. Nobody even talked about that early.
Except for my uncle, he was like a hippie, and he was just like a freak.
Trailblazer.
He was just coming in.
He was vegetarian.
He was vegan. He would come in with this stuff, and I was like, this smells funny. Why are these grains in different bags? What's going on here? And he was just like, oh, but it was enticing. It definitely started the light bulb.
Curiosity.
Yes.
And I do think a big positive coming out of the pandemic is people looking into interact themselves with their diets or their lifestyles and health and and the connections of what you eat can affect the earth and the planet and all that. I think people are way more conscious now of that. You know what I'm saying? Coming out of this.
I would think so.
I do think that's a really good thing. I think that we have a reckoning in our future, though. I mean, I think that there are many people who don't realize the mental health impact of this kind of isolation.
Yes.
I didn't. I didn't get COVID for a really long time, Toby. That I just recently got the COVIDs. And it was like, got the COVIDs, and it was like horrifying. Like I had it for 21 days. And so I had it for an extra long time, and my dog had just died. And I then had to go almost immediately into quarantine and isolate myself from human contact for several days. And it was like one of the worst things that ever happened to me. Like, I don't want to sound dramatic, but like losing my dog was probably one of the worst things that ever happened to me. And then to have to not be around my husband during that time, it was just so hard. And like, I literally told Anthony, I was like, I think we're going to get a divorce. Like, I don't know, like, I'm so emotionally unstable right now. And like, I don't know how to like get my arms around this. I'm like texting Toby, like, sorry, I can't do the podcast today. And then I'd be like crying into my keyboard. It was just like a really hard thing. And I'm like, I don't remember reading the article in the New York Times about this. I don't remember seeing the study by anyone about the mental health impact of quarantine. I remember a friend of mine tweeted that she had to go into quarantine right after giving birth. She had to be isolated from her newborn baby. I can't even imagine what she had to go through. Nobody wrote that story either. And this is just, I think that sure, we just continue to just, shove this under the rug and not talk about it. I think that there are going to be consequences to that. What those consequences are going to be, I don't know. It remains to be seen. It's another pernicious effect of this disease.
And younger kids too, kids who couldn't go to school. My son graduated online. Like,
absolutely,
they need that social when they're young, growing.
Well,
and
I mean, it's like people were suffering extremely, and even before that, I mean, the whole lockdown situation.
Yeah.
I wanted to write a song, and I did it was called Isolation. It was about prison system and how it's inhumane to have people in isolation and solitary confinement. And I thought it was disturbing watching all the studies of how it mentally drives you insane, and it makes you sicker. You know, the person that's in prison, it's really a form of torture. Then the whole pandemic happens, and everyone's like, oh, you wrote the song about being in confinement and how you can drive you crazy. And I was like, no, it was actually about something else. But maybe people will look at it differently now.
Fascinating.
You know, it really is fascinating. It's like, we shouldn't really be putting people in isolation like that, because people need that's how we are as a species.
I never even thought of that.
Me either.
Oh my God.
Me
But that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Actually, that's like really important to talk about, because I think people are embarrassed. I think people are embarrassed to be like, yeah, it hurt me to be in isolation.
It's going to.
Yeah,
it
I
makes
think,
sense that it would hurt.
Yeah,
you.
like they don't want to be called out as a wussy or whatever. Like, oh, you're so weak because you couldn't handle 10 days in isolation. No. I'm like, yeah, no, it was horrible. Like, I was horrible. I was crying every day. Like, I'm not going to lie. You know, it was awful.
Yeah, it's heavy, man.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're coming out of that and coming into a
I think there
world.
is such a thing as too much introspection.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's been a problem. I mean, especially when you talk to people that had to go through isolation, you know, and I think it hit me when I watched a documentary about a young boy who was falsely accused of stealing a backpack of someone and then having to go through the system.
I saw that.
Putting him in isolation, and then he ended up getting out, going to school, and then eventually killing himself.
Oh, my God.
Because the impact stayed with them.
Oh, it's
you
terrible.
know?
Yeah.
It was terrifying. And I was like, wow, nobody deserves to be tortured in that way.
Yeah, especially a child.
Yeah, especially a young child.
Yeah.
This podcast took a real
Yeah, that always happens with a Korean vegan.
You started your podcast.
Yes.
You have like 6 episodes now?
No, I think we have closer to we're on episode 21.
Okay.
Yeah, but like the first 8 is just me reading out loud, because that's why
wow.
I started it by accident. Like it wasn't supposed to be a podcast. Yeah, it was just like I was proofreading my newsletter. I send out a newsletter every week. I was proofreading it, and I proofread by reading out loud. And I was like, oh, I wonder if people would appreciate it if I just read it out loud to them, so they don't have to sit there and look at their phone or read on their computer. Yeah. They could just have it on their AirPods while they're doing the laundry or, whatever. So I was like, oh, I'll just read it out loud. So literally the first one is toxic productivity. Today, it's literally that.
That's so awesome.
Do you like hearing your voice? Does it trip you out? Do you listen back to your stuff?
Sometimes I do. I know you don't. I know you're like, once it's done, it's done. Yeah. Sometimes I do. I tell myself I need to in order to improve and to do better. I do get cringy. Like I was listening to Tomorrow's today because I was, proofing it essentially. And I was like, oh my God, it's so cringy. Like, can people stand my voice right now? So it's hard sometimes to listen to my own voice. But like I said, I'm trying to improve from week to week. It's still so nascent. It's not like yours fully established and you got like a thing.
Are you a perfectionist?
I'm not as much as my husband, who helps with editing things. Like, he's like, no, your voice is slightly off there. You should re-record it. And I'm like, no, babe. Like, I've literally spent 14 hours on this thing. It's done. I'm not doing any more. Mm-hmm. So I'm not like to that point, but there are certain things that I feel need to be well done. My writing needs to be well done. The sound quality needs to be as best as I can make it. Yeah. That's very important to me. And then the music needs to be really good. I spend almost for a 1 hour podcast, that means I'm spending 4 hours trying to pick out the music and make sure that it fits, where I put it and place it, edit it. Yeah.
Are you a pretty harsh critic of yourself?
I can be a harsh critic. I will say one of the joys of this podcast was that it's accidental. So it's doing very well right now. Awesome. And I didn't expect it or intend it to, really.
Yeah.
You know, so that's very nice and it's gratifying, and I think we have a really beautiful product, and I'm really gratified when I hear from people, oh my God, I've listened to all of your episodes and now I have them on repeat. That always makes me very happy. But at the same time, like from a macro perspective, I have very little space in my life to enjoy success. I give myself maybe, like, for example, when I was on the New York Times bestseller list, I gave myself maybe 3 hours to really soak it in. And then it was on to the next. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So, like, it's hard for me to enjoy those moments and be very present for them because my parents, they drove me so much to never sit on my laurels. You always have to be 20 steps ahead of everyone else in order to survive.
Wow. Yeah. Are you proud of everything you've done?
I'm proud of many of the things I've done. I'm proud of, my legal career. I'm very proud of that because it was hard and it wasn't easy. And I'm glad that I stuck it out for as long as I did. I'm proud of the fact, as I mentioned, that I left my first husband because that was the hardest thing I ever did. I'm proud of the 5 marathons that I've run, even the one that was really, really slow. I'm proud of those things. So, there are a lot of things that I'm proud of. I don't think when people think like, oh, you must be so proud of your current success in my career, I don't know. Like when compared to a marathon, or compared to my divorce, I feel like so much of what has happened to me was by luck. Like things like my braised potato. Like who the heck knows like why that went viral? I don't know,
I don't know. What would happen if it hadn't happened? Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I don't know. Like so like a lot of things that have happened to me, like I do attribute to TikTok, and I remain so grateful to them. I tell them all the time, like you changed my life,
Wow.
And it's the same thing with
you
YouTube
talk to
now.
the TikTok?
Oh yeah, I tell them TikTok all the time, like you guys have changed my life. Like I literally would not be here without you, and they know that. Like they had me as their keynote at VidCon. Like they love my story. Okay. Yeah. So like I am very grateful to the people around me. It's hard for me to take that much credit over those types of things.
Yeah. You have any regrets?
Yeah, I talked about this earlier in one of my podcast episodes, the one about not having kids. I call it, FOMO and not having children and this fear of missing out.
FOMO, why don't I have children? I have it right here.
We're looking at Toby's notes for the record.
For the record.
Right there. So that's your regret? Okay.
I mean, I don't know that I regret it. It's like regret is such a black and white concept, but most of life isn't like that. I mean, I think there are things in your life that you might say, maybe I would have done things a little differently. I don't know. Yeah. It's really easy to think that, but in that decision space, like you don't know whether you would have done things differently if given a second chance. Mm-hmm. And I feel the same way about my choices. I do think that when push comes to shove, I do regret not listening to my parents when they told me not to get married. Like I think about that moment so much. And it was around food. My parents, they made me a huge bowl of tteokguk, which is a Korean dumpling rice cake soup. And it was New Year's Day. That's what we eat on New Year's Day is tteokguk. And my mom made me this huge bowl. And she knows like I love tteokguk. So like I was so excited to eat her tteokguk. And she passes me this bowl. And then with it, she like slides across the table this big envelope, like those birthday cards, Hallmark birthday cards. I'm like, oh, I'm getting money this year for New Year's, which is a Korean tradition, but one we had dispensed with many years ago. So I open the envelope and I'm so excited and I start reading it, and it's a letter from my mom and my dad basically saying, we think he's the wrong man. Please reconsider marrying him. And I just remember getting so mad, like, how dare you question my love? You're not, I'm not a child anymore. Right. And I didn't eat any tteokguk and I stormed out of my parents' house. I was so mad. And I remember saying over and over again, love is enough. That's all you need. Because even then I knew like, yeah, we got some issues, but I wasn't willing to grapple with them. So yeah, I think about that moment. If somebody had, like, if I had to answer, like, I probably should have had some of that tteokguk that day and maybe been a little bit more open to my mom and my dad.
Wow.
Yeah. But then maybe you wouldn't be here.
Right? That's exactly right. I don't know that I would have met Anthony and, Anthony's the love of my life. So I don't know that I would have met him, like if I had been free at that time,
right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How much do you run a week?
Right now I'm not running very much because of COVID. I'm still recovering from that. So I think this week I'm running like 19 miles, which is not
Pretty good.
Yeah, I was like, pretty.
19 more than mine.
yeah.
Well, that's awesome.
It's not a lot.
And then you consider yourself an optimist or pessimist. You seem so positive.
Honestly, I'm probably more of a pessimist than an optimist.
Wow.
Yeah. I think Anthony is an optimist, which is why he's a great balance
That's
to
good.
me, but for me, I'm always like kind of a downer.
I don't get that vibe from you at all, though, man.
I know. Like,
you get that vibe from her?
No, but
I'm-
I can understand listening to stories about your mother
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I think there's a side to me that many people don't get to see on social media, which is very sarcastic, very like kind of wry and dry. Like I'm very like, like my sense of humor is not what people would anticipate.
Okay.
Right. And so I think that part of me speaks to sort of my default setting, which is to look down instead of up. But I also understand how dangerous despair can be, because I've grappled with that in my life. And I know that of all things, despair is the thing that is most horrible, because
Right.
it will lead to the end of your life.
Yes.
And so I know how dangerous that is. So I'm always muscling to turn that arrow up,
That's
and
good.
that is
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
struggle of my life. And I think that's a good struggle.
Right.
Yeah. And you just got the congrats on the Global Impact Award at Mercy for Animals. I saw that.
Oh,
The other day she got
nice.
that, yeah.
Nice.
That was such a
Congrats.
surreal
Congrats.
moment.
So obviously you knew you were getting that when you go there.
Yes,
Yeah.
I did.
Oh.
It was great to know that in advance. yeah.
Yeah. You have a speech and stuff. And
Yeah, I
Oh,
prepared
wow.
a 2-minute speech, and it's funny you mentioned that, because I getting the New York Times bestseller and then winning the James Beard, those were from sectors that don't care whether you're a vegan or not, right? It's part of the story,
Yeah.
but it's
Right.
not a requirement, right?
Right.
But like Mercy for Animals Gala, I just remember, like, as I was standing there to accept the reward, there was just this weird moment where I felt like I have finally arrived where I think God always wanted me to be. I think God always made me love animals like my whole life. And for a long part of my life, I just denied it. And I was like, no, I need to eat bacon. Or like, I'm sorry, but I have to eat kalbi. Sorry. And so
God.
like finally being there on that stage, I was able to just say, I love animals so much. And now I don't eat them. And it makes me feel
Beautiful.
so great. Like I just felt so happy about that. And it's nice to be able to stand in your space and feel like no adjustments need be made any longer. I'm where I was meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, were you nervous?
Of course I was nervous. I was afraid that I would forget my speech or lose my voice, which has happened to me. Like when I get really nervous, especially when I was performing a lot when I was in high school and college for like a recital or something, if I would get nervous, my voice would disappear. Or one time I was singing a duet with somebody and I was so nervous, I just started laughing hysterically in the middle of the song. I felt so bad for him. He's sitting there continuing to sing and I'm just laughing in his face. It was awful.
What song was it? Something we know now.
It was some musical. It was a Broadway musical. Like
Wow.
I think it was from Sun and Moon.
I'd probably start laughing too.
It was so bad. My parents were mortified. They wanted to literally melt into the floor. It was awful. I felt so bad.
So what's next for you? So a new book?
Yes, working on the book right now. That's going to take up a lot of my time. We're going to
Is it
be...
going to be the same concept? Or?
Yeah.
It's slightly different. The first book is largely a collection of stories about my family and their movement from North Korea to South Korea to the United States and kind of that experience, which I think many people were very interested in. This second book is going to be much more about my memoir, so my childhood and, some of the things that I've grappled with as a young adult and then certainly in my later life. And so each chapter will focus on, a certain time in my life, whether it's or a certain aspect of my identity. For example, I'm now an aunt, as we talked about.
Yes.
So there will be an entire chapter about food for kids and what
like
it's
that.
like to nurture children on a plant-based diet and things
Nice.
like that. So that will be really fun to make.
Be
and
helpful. for
Yeah.
a lot
I
of
think
parents.
so.
Like,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Like
That's
just-
a main concern of a lot of people when they raise
Yes,
their kids like
for
that.
sure. That's
Yeah, I
it.
mean, like fun, delicious food that I know how challenging it can be to
Yeah.
feed younger.
Oh yeah, especially since there's so much propaganda from the bad food.
Oh yeah,
that's
like
out
what's
there,
bad and
you
what's
know?
good. Yeah, for
kids are
sure.
completely
Especially like the school lunches and the
brainwashed,
food that's
you know?
available at schools is horrendous.
It is,
horrendous,
especially in this
processed,
country.
crazy,
Yeah.
bad. But they have so much money in the advertisement that it's hard to
Oh, I mean, yeah.
battle. You know, the kid sees this stuff and they're like, "Oh my god!" I
Yeah, they
need
don't
that.
care. Like
No.
they don't care. Like,
No.
oh, this is unethical or whatever.
But it's geared towards kids.
Of
That's
course.
what makes it so like,
Scary.
yeah,
It
yeah,
is.
yeah.
It is.
What about the vegan school? There's a vegan school out in Calabasas by that director who did.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Right?
By the director, James Cameron.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
vegan school, yeah. Man.
That's excellent.
I
Yeah.
think there is some hope. The more Cory Bookers and things
Cory
like
Booker,
that
yeah.
Cory Booker.
that continue to raise their profiles in politics, there is some hope that we'll get more regulation on the books that are geared towards feeding our children in a way that's intentional. I'm not necessarily saying plant-based or vegan,
Yeah.
but at least like better than what's out there right now.
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
think that will inevitably lead to more vegetable,
inevitable.
plant-forward food.
Absolutely.
You know, because that is just medically what's better for children
Yeah.
anyway. So I think that's a good thing. And my hope is that we'll see more of that. But yeah, that school in Calabasas is like a really good sort of blueprint for other schools. Obviously,
Cool.
you know, financially, there needs to be some support from our government.
Yes.
Hello,
And that does,
government,
yeah,
if you're
that
listening.
remains a
Right.
challenge.
Very
yeah.
true.
Because I'm not even sure how, if
Some
that's a private school, or if
subsidies
that's an
and- right.
expensive school out there. Everybody who lives in Calabasas, like more options like that.
Yeah,
All around the country.
Mhm.
exactly.
It's different options. It's a different world now.
There are people who are working on that, and that's again something that helps me to move the arrow from the down position to the up.
Yeah. So the Korean Vegan is your Instagram. That's your website. That's your podcast.
Yeah, it's the Korean Vegan everywhere, literally Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube.
Oh,
website.
YouTube too. Yeah, as well. Yeah.
Yeah, YouTube is a big part of our business plan.
Oh,
so,
okay.
yeah,
Mhm.
you guys should get on YouTube.
Are you on
Talked
YouTube?
about it.
I know.
No,
Oh,
but
yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
thinking about it in many different ways.
It is the
Yeah.
most lucrative form of social media content creation. They are a true business partner. You should get on it.
Ooh, and TikTok
Ooh.
too. That's a good
And
one.
the TikToks.
TikTok will get you brand recognition and PR. That's
Mhm.
really important, part of any business's strategy. But if you want a real partner to your business,
Mhm.
somebody who will literally split the ad revenue basically 50-50 with you, then that's just YouTube.
Wow.
That's good to know.
It's
I
really
had
good to
no
know.
idea.
Mhm.
Are you
Yeah.
learning more and more about social media now that you got dialed in right now, algorithms and all that stuff?
Oh, yeah. I'm learning a lot about that. I got to spend some time with YouTube, folks the past week, and it was incredible, and it was very eye-opening. And
Wow.
it's really nice to know that there are a bunch of people out there who've been doing it in a way that's accretive and thoughtful and that awards good behavior.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, it's really nice. Yeah.
So that'd be like the number one platform you think as far as like
Again, it
Yeah.
depends on what you're going for. If you
Right.
want to be famous and you want to be a movie star, then I don't know.
Ew.
Like then
It's like, ew.
there's some people that
and work hard and start taking acting classes.
I mean, there's some people who that's what they want, and then
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
TikTok
yeah.
is probably better for you if that's what you want. If you're a small business and you are an entrepreneur, then I think that YouTube is probably better for you in that way. So it really depends on what you're going for,
Right.
and I think that the fact that there are options out there is great. I do think you have to be careful about social media. I know there are a lot of people out there who are ready to just destroy social media and just burn it all to the ground, and I understand that instinct,
Right.
certainly.
Yeah.
But I think that there can be a lot of good that comes from it as well.
Yeah. I think so too, man.
Yeah.
I don't know, where would we have been during COVID isolation without social media?
It's crazy because before that, they were saying that social media was making people not hang out and have conversations. Everybody's on the
Yes.
phones all day.
True.
People are not hanging
Which
out.
was true.
People can look
Yeah.
on there and say, "Oh, Toby's on tour. I need to text him and check in with him." But how do you know how I'm doing mentally? I could be on tour, but how do you know how I'm doing? You see that I'm doing that, right?
Yes.
And I feel like the pandemic, the social media became such a positive connection for people on the whole entire world to be all connected. We all shut down together.
Yeah.
I felt like that was such a a powerful thing in a positive way. I thought.
You're correct.
But then there was politics every single day, like Trump.
Yeah,
Every day. There was
There's a good and a bad. Yeah.
Yeah, there's the good and the bad.
It was over the top.
Right.
Those 2 years of that.
There was
like,
definitely like
the
the
positive,
good and the
negative,
bad, but there was
But we were connected. I feel like the world was really connected through that.
Do you remember those videos from Italy?
Yes.
Where the violinists would get out on their patio and like
so
the
emo.
whole, like seriously, I would cry.
Me too, man.
I mean, that's what social media can do.
That was beautiful.
Right.
I mean, just because we weren't in Italy, so we
Nah.
wouldn't have seen that. But like that fed us during
She's
those
right. It's so
days,
true,
you know,
man.
No,
so
without a doubt.
powerful.
And they tried that in New York too. Everybody,
Yeah.
all out the windows of apartments.
Yeah. I mean, there's something galvanizing, and it shouldn't be kind of don't throw the baby out with the bathwater kind of idea. You know, that's sort of like my very premature thoughts on it, because I've been thinking about social media and its role a lot, and I don't want to dismiss that there are some very dangerous things about it, but there's also a lot of good that comes from it. Certainly we would,
no
I don't know
doubt.
that we would have been friends if it were for
Yeah.
social media.
You spend a lot of time. Like, you ever check your hours on your phone? Like,
No, I don't like, to me, that's like, it's my job,
Right.
you know?
I
So,
agree.
I mean, I do think that like many entrepreneurs, I have fallen into that trap where I basically don't take any days off. I'm working around the clock all the time because it's hard for me to draw boundaries around something that also provides me a lot of entertainment and joy. You know, I'm like, okay, this is my job, but it's so fun, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
So it is a little hard sometimes. I think with the podcast, now that we have invested so heavily in it, I've been learning more, like, however fulfilling this is for you, and you may feel the same way, like, it is important to say, okay, we got to press the stop button now. Like, you need to just remove yourself from the studio and go sit down and watch TV for a couple hours, eat some good food, and go to bed. Yeah, I know.
Decompress.
Yeah, like, you have things that need to get done, but I'm sorry, they're just going to have to wait for you until tomorrow.
Yeah. Do you sleep a lot? You a late night person?
I don't like to stay up late at night because I'm a runner, and I usually have to run first thing in the morning. And I've known that if I don't get a good,
Yeah.
solid amount of sleep, my running suffers from that.
What's solid for you? 6 hours, 7 hours?
8 hours.
Okay, good,
Like,
good,
yeah,
good.
I want 8 hours optimally, 7 hours minimum.
Okay.
But these days I've been having a lot of trouble sleeping. I think because I'm like always thinking about the podcast, and I'm thinking about like, what am I going to
Your mind never
write?
stops.
Yeah, your mind's just constantly working. And so
It's hard to shut that off.
it really is. I was actually thinking, talking about social media and addiction, but I was thinking of starting a new vlog called The Inner Dialogue, where I literally just say out loud what's on my mind.
That'd be incredible.
Or I'm
man.
like, like brushing my teeth, and I'm like thinking like, man, I really need to start flossing more. Why don't I start flossing more? I don't like floss.
I mean, that's really putting it out there, but that's amazing.
Because like I was just like, my inner dialogue is like really nonstop.
It's like the last thing you probably do is your phone. The first thing you probably do is see your phone.
It's exactly right.
It's hard, like shut it off and then turn it on. You know what I mean? Like mine's completely off during the night.
Yeah.
Moon leaves are on for a vibration and wake up in the morning, whatever. Or like if my son's out, but like,
I put
and that's why I
the-
like this podcast, just having conversations face to face.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Well, I
saying?
love
Like,
that it's face to
I
face.
love it. It's
Yeah.
just,
No doubt. Yeah.
it's just get way more. You know.
For
any,
sure.
Any more questions for this lovely woman?
Yeah, I'm sure there are. But yeah, I'm really impressed. This is the first time, hearing about everything that you've been doing, and I think it's incredible. I'm looking forward to trying to make some of these dishes.
Yeah,
And I think you should give yourself definitely more credit than
Aw.
100%.
For sure,
100%.
have that celebratory dinner for being on the New York Times list. It's okay to be like, I did well.
Yeah.
I am,
Yeah.
like I had to learn in some respect to do that. Where I like, what, I do deserve this. I worked hard.
Aw.
And I heard this from one musician that I said to him when he got off stage, I was like, you guys are so good. And he was like, I know.
Dang.
And I was like, and he was just I was like, I love that. And he was just like, I know, we rocked.
That's amazing.
And I was like, it was amazing. I was like, fuck, you did. I'm not going to argue about it. He felt good. He felt good about it. And he had no problem saying it. He felt comfortable and
you
everything.
can still be humble and
Yeah,
appreciate
exactly.
and be proud
Yeah.
and know that you worked hard for something.
Yeah,
you got,
absolutely.
you know what I mean?
And I was like, yo, I get that. And he's like, I usually, when I have great shows and people are like, hey, you know, you were great tonight. He's like, yeah, I know.
That is one silver lining to the negative comments and to people trying to take me down is it forces me to say, no, like I deserve to be here. You move, you know? So,
well, that's also part of your success and part of everything you've done and where you're at on social media and where you're at in your life, that no matter what you do, it's not going to be good enough for anybody else. Or like, you know what I mean? There's always going to be opinions. And
always.
When people are talking about you good or bad, that actually means you're doing something good. You're doing, and you're living your best life, and you're inspiring people, and you're happy, and you know what I mean?
I am very happy to be here.
Yeah.
I love this. It's amazing. Your voice is so soothing.
It's great. It's a great voice. Definitely.
Well, considering the caliber of the people that you've had in this very kitchen, I feel very honored to be included. And
I'm stoked to get to meet you.
I'm glad that you like my voice.
I love your voice, but I love your journey too. And it's,
I
met you then. And obviously, I followed you since then and watch all the stuff you're doing. But just to hear your story and just how you were raised, just everything, where you're at now, it's like, awesome.
We didn't even talk about punk rock, which I don't even know.
What do you know about punk? What do you know?
So my first husband was a skater. And
he was a skater boy?
Yeah, he was a skater and he was a drummer.
Oh
and
my
God.
God.
Is there a band you're going to tell us?
So the two bands that I had to listen to secondhand was NoFX and Pavement. That was
Those are two randoms.
Really?
Totally.
No effects. That's cool though. Wow.
Yeah. So there was we were listening to H2O on the way here.
What?
And of course,
I've heard of them.
Yeah, I heard of them too. And we were listening to that and I was like, oh man, this brings me back to those days, like very much. And I remember, because I grew up a classically trained musician. I played violin, piano. Yeah, Garfunkel, exactly. So at the time when my ex-husband was trying to introduce me to this kind of music, at first I was like, no, I don't like this kind of music. But ultimately, because I loved him, I wanted to learn a little bit more about its structure and its underpinnings and the poetry of it, right? And it became, like, kind of grew on me. Like, there was something so whimsical and romantic about it, and it was very nostalgic too. And I liked that it was so raw. It was raw, but it was also structured. Like, it is one of the more structured kinds of music because of the rhythm. And, because my ex-husband was a drummer, like, I understood, like, the beat had to be very, very crisp and precise for it to be successful, right? And so there was something about it that I found kind of hypnotically nostalgic, and I really did come to enjoy it. Now, obviously, I didn't continue listening to it after my divorce. But yeah, I listening to it today, I was like, there's a lot to be appreciated in this kind of music.
Wow, thank you.
Yes.
I love how you're down for your dude. Like, I'm gonna check out punk. I don't like it. I'm gonna try to be vegan. I'm gonna go vegan for Anthony. I love that.
Yeah,
like, you're like
that's really.
It can be bad, but it can also be good.
No, but I mean, you're in a relationship. You're in a relationship.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, like, exactly. Like, I didn't want to be like a snob about it to the man I loved. Right.
So you've been to punk shows back then?
No, I didn't go to any punk shows.
You're like,
nothing. I was very, I have to say, like, I was very attracted to skaters. Like, that was the thing. And that was why I was so attracted to my first husband, was because, he wore the pipes. Is that what they were called? I don't know what they were called in New York City.
Pants?
No, they're the big baggy pants.
That was that time then.
And then he had the Adidas, like, skater shoes.
Tattoos?
He did not have to. We're Korean. No, he did not have tattoos.
Okay. Well, you have tattoos.
I do now. I have 8 tattoos.
How many?
8.
Oh, so that's not a Korean.
No.
My parents.
Actually,
were really bad.
I remember being in South Korea, and it was like in the gym, and I had like a tank top on. They're like, can you put this shirt on? I was like, I'm not putting that damn long sleeve shirt on.
Japan for me too. Japan too. But Yakuza neighborhood.
Right. Yeah. But even Korea, I was like,
tattoos means that you're a criminal in Korea. So like,
I got it.
Yeah, you can't have, like, my mom was so mad,
I
but
can imagine.
She couldn't say much because the first tattoo I got was her design. She didn't know. I tricked her. I was like, I need some art for my office. So can you do something like kind of pretty? And she put like all these options together. And I was like, thanks. And I brought him to the tattoo artist. And
another question.
Yes.
Sorry. I didn't want to forget, just because I don't know if I don't think it's a dumb question, but I don't know anything about Korean cuisine. So Korean barbecue, was this something that was always in Korea, or was it something that was made up in America?
Great question.
That's a really good question, and I don't know, but I would hazard a guess that like all meat consumption that I've been aware of, it came during the Korean War. So when the United States came to Korea in the 50s for the war, that's when Korean people started to eat a lot more meat.
Yes.
Now, that said, it's very possible that, the marinade that, you put the Korean barbecue in existed before that time, and people were eating like maybe like very wealthy people,
Right.
or
Yeah.
like, because prior to that time, prior to Korea's democracy, we were living in an empire, right?
Right.
So it's very possible, like in the royal castles and temples and stuff like that, that they were eating something very similar to what we now think of as Korean barbecue. But I don't think the idea called barbecue like existed prior to the United States. And certainly some of the other things like spam obviously didn't, like that was not part of our vocabulary until the United States came for the war.
What about
Very
a Korean vegan restaurant?
I wish that there were more Korean vegan restaurants. There are a couple in New York. I know there's one in New York City called Hangawi, which is okay. It's not like the best, but it's not bad either. And there are certainly restaurants in LA that cater to Korean diet so that they have Korean options.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of a Korean vegan restaurant. For my own sake, I've literally thought about just like opening a restaurant.
That's what I really meant, actually,
Yeah, because I'm just like, that was why I started the Korean vegan. That's why I wrote this book, because there was an emptiness, and it wasn't like, oh, I want to give people something. I was like, no, I need it. Like, I need Korean vegan recipes, and it would be great if there was a book, but there isn't one, so I'll just make one.
Awesome.
And now it's like kind of thinking like, there just isn't a Korean vegan restaurant out there. And so we have been thinking about creating sort of like a Korean vegan Chipotle, which is like, just like, okay, you can choose brown rice, you can choose white rice, or you can choose noodles, like, like tangmyeon, which is a gluten-free noodle. And then, a bunch of pickled vegetables like kimchi and other banchan, which is the side dishes in Korea. And then like proteins like, braised tofu or, there's so many different proteins that I use in my cooking that are very easy in order to turn it into like a Chipotle. So that's what like I've been thinking about a lot. And I think it would do well, like, because a lot of people don't care if it's vegan or not vegan. They just want delicious food that's easy and convenient.
Yeah. I mean, even when I was just in Brazil, there was a place that I went to, and they don't put anything labeled plant-based or vegan.
Wow.
And it was madly successful.
Yeah. I
Just
mean,
tasty food. And I
just delicious
thought this
food.
Is a great idea.
Delicious, fast, healthy,
Yes.
nutritious.
Could people come at you and say, I want my money back? I didn't know it was vegan.
I never.
How dare you
I
serve
was
it? Tell me
asking the
what's
people
vegan.
there that were running it, and
I don't think so from a
no.
legal perspective. No.
Right.
Yeah. Like unless you advertised it as something else, like this is
Right.
chicken and it's not, then sure. Yeah. They would have a claim against you. But subject to that, I can't think of a way that they would ask. Now, from a business perspective, maybe you want to, maybe you don't. I don't know. I wouldn't, but I think that would be a cool, like I would eat there like all the time. Like I would be their best customer.
Right.
Now I'm like, someone's going to steal this idea and they're going to make it and I'm going to be annoyed.
I thought you could open up your own spot. I think it'd be amazing.
I've
Yeah.
been thinking about it. We're working on it. It would be really, really cool to do that. And I think a lot of people would enjoy it. I think I would be good at it. Like
Yeah.
speaking of like, what are you good at? This is what I'm good at.
well, we're definitely good at tasting. So I know
Yeah,
Toby
for
and I
sure.
would definitely love to be there
I
for
will
the tasting.
one day. I will cook for you both.
I would
We
love
will
that.
make it
Love
happen.
that.
It'll be delicious.
One restaurant in Chicago, one in LA.
Yeah.
I would want one all over the country.
Yes.
I mean, like a Chipotle situation where just
Real
people
chain.
can walk in.
Where people can actually, let's say, I want to open one in my city. So
Yeah.
you give them the right.
Like something like that. We could
easy.
franchise that. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I'm not sure, but like the way I see it is Korean food is so good. Vegan, gluten-free is here to stay, whether people like it or not,
Yeah.
and like, let's do it. And I know how to do it. I know
Right.
how to make vegan, Korean,
I would love to
gluten-free
try
food.
it. I
Yeah.
never tried it. I'd love to.
Really?
Yeah, I never.
Oh my gosh.
Have you?
Oh, we gotta fix that.
Okay. I'm gonna work up to your house to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I never had it. No.
Wow.
I
But
would love
is
to have it from you. That'd be amazing.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would definitely love that.
Well, I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate sharing your journey. And This is a long time overdue since we met, and
Yeah.
appreciate you listening to the pod, and we talk about it, and it's awesome.
Well, I appreciate you putting the pod together. I know it was for an incredibly heartwarming cause and the work that you're doing, and it's really nice. I love hearing that you're kind of an emo guy, notwithstanding.
Kinda.
Like,
Kinda.
I feel like I'm too emo for punk rock and hardcore.
no,
sometimes.
I think it
no.
actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I think it makes a lot of sense.
Don't let the tattoos fool you.
Yeah, don't let the tattoos.
You know what I mean?
fool
Sometimes
you.
I
You're
just wish
right.
I sang in Coldplay. That would fit
Don't
me
we
better.
all? Yeah.
Yeah, but not because of success. It's because
No, I mean
I
because
am
they
a
got
sensitive
a
soul.
great
Sometimes
show.
I feel like I'm too sensitive. I'm not tough enough or this enough for hardcore. Do you know what I mean?
Ah, that's bullshit.
I think there's a
Punk rock.
lot of
Hardcore is
emotion.
about emotion,
Yeah, I think
period.
exactly. I think
Yeah.
a lot of your music is incredibly emotional. It just takes a discerning ear to actually hear it,
Mm.
and that's a good
And
thing.
an
I mean,
open mind.
we
an
could say
open
all
mind.
music's emotional too, because it comes from a real
That's
place.
very
Absolutely.
true.
Like
Yes.
you're emotional, Sepultura. Can you get that? Sorry, you're emotional. Metallica's emotional.
Yes.
Doesn't matter.
No,
You know what I
you're
mean?
right.
Like,
You're right.
I think good music,
Good music is
emotional.
yes.
There is bad music out
Do you
there.
like Coldplay?
I do. Like I said, I'm not very familiar with pop music.
Better say yes, Toby.
I have listened to them, but only because of So You Think You Can Dance.
Are you serious?
Yes.
It's because of that.
I love So You Think You Can Dance, and they often use Coldplay's music for that, and that's how I was introduced to
Well, I think it's
Coldplay's
kind of cool. My
music.
son's finding music from 15-second TikTok videos now.
You never know, and I love that. Like a lot of times when I hear music nowadays, I'm like, oh, that's a TikTok song.
That's where you know it came from.
Yeah, and that's great. Like, who cares? Like, however you're introduced to it, as long as you have the ear and the heart to appreciate it, I think that's the most important thing.
I love that. I feel like I could talk to you for hours, man, but I really appreciate you being there.
Yay.
Anthony for being here too, just chilling out, and we'll do a part 2 someday when we have a new book come out and all
Yes,
that.
yes, and I will cook for you before
yeah.
part 2 comes
Yeah,
out.
we're gonna do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Korean Vegan, you can find it everywhere on the interweb.
So awesome. I'm
Right.
so stoked.
I'm glad you could be
I'm-
able to meet
I'm-
her.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank,
you.
thank you for.
I know. So you have to come here to meet her. I knew you guys would.
Don't
yeah.
leave me
Lee,
hanging.
you're
bro.
leaving him
Come
hanging.
on,
And Derek, you're
Jesus.
great. You're always great to have on the pod. Love your questions and your voice and your face.
I'm already
Absolutely.
hungry just looking at the
I
cover.
know, man.
I'm
Max,
like,
don't be all loud. The podcast isn't over yet. Okay. Max, you want to say anything, Max? You good?
Hey, Max.
he's gonna be late for work.
Oh,
so.
you are? You have to go to work right now? I want to go to Nick's on Beverly right now, too. I'm starving. Max works at Nick's on Beverly.
I know.
Max, would tell me
I
to
always
work.
ask my guests if they have any regrets.
8 minutes?
I personally don't have
Okay,
any
we're
regrets.
signing off.
Okay.
Right, goodbye.
Even when it comes to my tattoos, I have the silliest tattoos. Even my ET on my leg, it's still a childhood memory for me, and I love it. I've had tattoos on top of tattoos strictly because I wanted more tattoos. I started getting tattoos when I was 18. I'm 52 now, and I can't stop. I've had laser treatment before on something on my arm. It's 4 tattoos on top of each other. And that experience at that place was pretty fast. It was pretty cold. It was in and out, swiped the credit card. Don't really tell me much. Didn't give me much details of anything was going to happen. So I never went back. So as of most recently, I'm so lucky enough to have had 2 sessions at Removery Tattoo Removal. My tattoo on my arm that looks like a big black blob is now super light. I've had 2 sessions. I have a long road ahead of me. None of this stuff happens overnight. You cannot take a tattoo up in one sitting. You have to be patient. And it's painful. They ice you up. It's super fast. To me, it felt like a bunch of rubber bands. But what's more painful than that is looking at something on your body that you think you're stuck with for the rest of your life. That sucks. But now for me, I'm really happy I started this journey. I'm slowly going to get this tattoo removed. I never thought in a million years I have any kind of real estate on my arm. I don't even know what I want, but it's exciting. I'm so honored to announce that One Life, One Chance podcast is now with Removery. I have a code. Use TobyH20 and get $100 off your first session. Call 866-934-4570 or go to removery.com. One of the most experienced tattoo removal companies in the world. Over 600,000 removal treatments done. 100 locations, U.S., Canada, and Australia. State-of-the-art peak-away laser technology, cryotechnology to reduce any discomfort. This is so exciting for me because all I do in these podcasts is talk about tattoos. From day one, if you've been listening to the podcast, talk about tattoos, talk about getting removed, talk about getting covered up. So this is such a perfect fit for me. Once again, go to removery.com or call 866-934-4570. Use my code TobyH20 and get $100 off. These guys are located everywhere. Try it out.
Yo, people always ask me what kind of frames I'm rocking. I've been rocking Caddis for a couple years. They make amazing progressive readers, which I wear. Also, they make sunglass readers, anti-glare, anti-smudge coating, anti-scratch, and anti-aging. That's why I look mad young when I wear them. I'm just kidding. But they make amazing frames. Caddis, so stoked to have you guys part of the podcast. You can go to caddislife.com/Toby10 and get $10 off your first purchase. Stoked. Thank you, Caddis. Welcome to the fam.